EWBSX the Cyberbully. It's hard to stop listening.
So much, you may even get tired of winning, and you'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore. Mr. President, it's too much. And I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more.
I've got bad news for you. You're Jewish.
Shut up, Goyim.
What is that?
Oh, look at my African American over here. Look at him.
I don't really care, Margaret. It's important to segregate.
The N-word.
Oh, the civil liberties and oh my gosh, what about the human rights? And oh no, it's so bad.
I've got an idea. Why don't we just kill him?
I am your voice.
What's going on, everyone? Good morning. Welcome to the ASTROLABE. Once again, the ASTROLABE is now a morning show. So you gotta update your priors. You gotta rearrange your schedule. You gotta maybe for some of you guys, you actually get to listen to the live show instead of being part of the replay gang. Maybe we're swapping out the live show and the replay gang. Just switching spots. There may be a few of you guys who can do both.
Welcome to the Gulag.
Recognize. I
if
see
you
some
survive,
of you.
You earn
Texas,
your freedom.
Texas. Thank you, sir. Texas. with the 5 gifted subs. JLH, hold on, make sure that this isn't gonna take away the show. JLH, Ninja of Spades, Timithus, 89, Heinz, and Melon. What's up, guys? Thank you, Texas, for the gifted subs, getting us started off well. You know what? Let's just do this. Oh, hold on. Everything's happening. It's all happening at once. Slosher!
Guten Morgen, friends.
Guten Morgen! My good friend Slosher, what's up? Leaf brethren. What's going on, everyone else? Please do share the show out so people know that the morning lab has returned. It was once a morning lab, then it became an afternoon lab, then it became an evening lab, then it became a night lab, and now it is back to an early morning lab. Replay gang having our time in the sun. Yeah, it's funny seeing there's crossovers. There's some people who are who were regulars in the evening lab, but I see some new ones. There's some new faces that are showing up now. So this is great. Mrs. Kingpilled is in the chat putting together her nice list. If you too want to get on the nice list, then go to tips.kingpilled.com. Submit your white pill prescription fees over there. Apple Pay, Google Pay, all the sorts of methods of payment there. You can also, if you want to just go straight to Cash App or Venmo, you can do that. I have got at Kingpilled over there. Those will not show up as alerts, but just let me know and I will manually update the tip goal. Speaking of the tip goal, yesterday, we reached the goal, and so we needed to have a drawing, and then everything was all kind of jacked up on my end. So what I wound up doing is I did the drawing, and I took a video of it. Took a screen capture of it. So now we get to watch the drawing. I know who the winner was, and you guys get to learn who the winner was. So the drawing from yesterday, there was 11 names, and here's what happened. Rand between, that's the formula. Da-da-da! Boom! Number 5, Slutty Milk. Slutty Milk was the winner last night of the drawing. So it looks like he hasn't made it here into the chat yet this morning. But when he does, we'll have to let him know that he was the winner. $50. Hold on here. Let me whatever. I'll save it. All right. Oh, spoiler alert. I forgot to I was gonna set this one up, but now you guys know. Now you guys know what's next. Millennial humor needs to be studied. Yeah, once Slutty Milk wakes up, let him know that he's got $50 coming to him. And we will do another drawing today if we hit the tip goal again this morning. Then we will do another drawing. So make sure you also go over to form.kingpilled.com. Just submit your info. No purchase necessary, anything like that. I just need to know what to call you, and I need to know who you are, and I need to know what to call you. Have a way of contacting you to let you know that you have won. If you do win, you get 10% of the total tip take for the stream, no matter what that number is. So theoretically, infinite ceiling. We all win together in that case. Thank you also to Roy's Redemption for subscribing, and Pale Morning Dude for sending in some kicks. Yeah, okay, so there's no introduction to this. I was just like, hey, I'm going to take you guys back. This legendary video, a core memory of my younger years. Yeah, let's just listen to it.
Oh, Charlie, you have to come with us to Candy Mountain. Yeah, Charlie, Candy Mountain. It's a land of sweets and joy and joyness.
Please stop bouncing on me.
Candy Mountain, Charlie. Yeah, Candy Mountain.
All right, fine. I'll go with you to Candy Mountain.
La 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 la. La, la, la,
it makes me so happy.
Enough with the singing already.
Our first stop is over there, Charlie.
Oh God, what is that?
It's a Leopleurodon, Charlie. Magical
Leopleurodon!
Leopleurodon. It's gonna guide our way to Candy Mountain.
Alright guys, you do know that there's no actual Candy Mountain, right?
Shun the non-believer.
Shun the non-believer.
Yeah.
It has spoken. It has told us the way.
It didn't say anything.
It's just over this bridge, Charlie. This magical bridge of hope and wonder.
Is anyone else getting, like, covered in splinters? Seriously, guys, we shouldn't be on this thing.
Charlie.
Charlie's a panicking.
Charlie.
I'm right here. What do you want?
We're on a bridge, Charlie. We're here.
This is living with these.
Well, what do you know? There actually is a Candy Mountain.
Candy Mountain, Candy Mountain, you fill me with sweet, sugary goodness. Go inside the Candy Mountain cave, Charlie. Yeah, Charlie, go inside the cave. Magical wonders are to behold when you enter.
Yeah, thanks, but no thanks. I'm gonna stay out here.
But you have to enter the Candy Mountain Candy Cave, Charlie.
JD Vance has watched
Oh, when
this
you're
video.
down and looking for some cheering up, then just head right on up to the Candy Mountain Cave. When you get inside, you'll find yourself a cheery land, such a happy and joy-filled and perky merry land. They've got lollipops and gummy drops and candy things, oh, so many things that will brighten up your day. It's impossible to wear a frown in Candy Town. It's the mecca of love, the Candy Cave. They've got jelly beans and coconuts with little hats, candy rats, chocolate bats. It's a wonderland of sweets. Ride the candy train to town and hear the candy band, candy bells. It's a
We
treat
will live
as
in a
they march
world
across
where
the
the
land.
president-
Cherry ribbons stream across the sky and to the ground. Turn around,
No.
it astounds. It's a dancing candy tree. In the
Charlie.
candy cave, imagination runs so free. So now, Charlie, please will you go into the cave?
Alright, fine. I'll go into the freaking Candy Cave. This had better be good.
Yeah. Goodbye, Charlie. Yeah, goodbye, Charlie.
Goodbye? What? Hey, what's going on here? Hello? Who is that? Oh, what happened? Oh, they took my freaking kidney.
Oh, God bless Jason Steele. Man, oh yeah. Trogdor, Burninator. Man. I feel old. I think I'm an unk. Guys, am I an unk? All right. We did that test the other day, the Michael Millerman test, and then a bunch of people sent me this one. So we're going to have to do this one as well. SU! Nigger Heil Hitler to you!
We grandmas appreciate the new morning shift labe.
Shout out to the grandma. We love our mega grandmas, don't we? We love our Labian grandmas. Thank you for the $88 tip to SU. What a we got a few Labian grandmas, regulars in the Astrolabe chat. It's a wonderful thing. I would imagine Gaga probably won't be hitting the live chat nearly as often. Maybe she's here. I don't know. I don't know if she's waking up early to catch the early morning labes. But shout out to our MAGA grandmas. All right. So since many AI generated quizzes have gained popularity, I made one myself. Artificial intelligence meets natural stupidity. What kind of idiot are you? Oh, that's a good question. I got to find out. I gotta know. What kind of idiot am I? 10 questions, 4 possible diagnoses. None of them are good news. There is no such thing as a community of people. There is only the solitude of man. It's 2 a.m. You can't sleep. What are you doing? Oh, this is a question made with me in mind. Number 1, scrolling through Wikipedia articles on medieval siege warfare. Okay, number 1. I don't know if I need to read the other ones. I'll do it just for the sake of it. Staring at the ceiling, composing a letter you'll never send. Rearranging furniture because the feng shui felt off. The feng shui felt off. And then number 4, convinced you figured out the stock market. Okay, those are actually pretty good. Yeah. Most likely number 1. It's probably between, maybe like something like between number 1 and number 4. convinced you figured out the stock market. I have been known to rearrange the furniture. This is a thing for me. Every once in a while, I just need to move everything around. It's just got to get rearranged. Things have to get changed up. Need to freshen up the environment around me. But yeah, definitely scrolling through Wikipedia articles on medieval siege warfare. Number 2, you're at a dinner party. Someone says something profoundly wrong. You, 1, deliver a 10-minute correction nobody asked for. Very likely not me. Depends on the dinner party, depends on the crowd, but most likely not me. Number 2, smile, say nothing, seethe internally for 3 weeks. Number 3, excuse yourself to the bathroom and never come back. D, agree enthusiastically, then contradict them 5 minutes later. That's actually, I very well might do that. That's probably the best answer. Agree enthusiastically and then contradict them 5 minutes later. Question number 3. Your ideal Sunday involves 1, a 600-page book, black coffee, 0 human contact. No. Number 2, walking through a city where nobody knows your name. That's kind of an interesting one. Number 3, making a spreadsheet to optimize your weekly routine, then ignoring it. Number 4, pitching a business idea to your cat. Your ideal Sunday. Probably of these, making a spreadsheet to optimize your weekly routine, then ignoring it. I'll say that. Question number 4. Someone asks, what do you do at a party? Your instinct. Oh, this is yeah. My wife hates this question. What do you do? I say the N-word on the internet. Answer number 1. Give a 45-second answer that leaves them more confused. Yeah, maybe. Something vague and poetic that sounds like a Tarkovsky film synopsis. Panic, lie, and say consulting. Describe the version of yourself that exists only in your head. That's a pretty good one. D is a pretty good one. The version of yourself that exists only in your head. Yeah, I think probably those are all very good. But the really honest answer is probably give them a 45-second answer that leaves them more confused. You receive a compliment. Your brain immediately, A, analyzes whether the compliment is factually accurate. B, assumes they want something but feels warm anyway. C, replays it 400 times, then decides they were being sarcastic. Or D, takes it as confirmation of your broader thesis about yourself. Probably A, analyzes whether the compliment is factually accurate. Your browser history would most embarrass you because A, you spent 4 hours researching Hittite trade routes. Well, something like that may be the case. I wouldn't really be embarrassed about it. You Googled how to know if someone misses you. You searched your own symptoms and diagnosed yourself with 5 diseases. Or you looked up how to start a country. Definitely 4. Definitely 4. Oh, man. In a zombie apocalypse, you'd be the one who, A, has already read a manual on post-collapse governance. Maybe. B, dies protecting someone who forgot your name. C, survives longest because your paranoia was finally useful. Or D, tries to negotiate with the zombies. Probably... none of those are... This one's verged a little too far into the funny of it and away from the applicability. Probably the closest would be has already read a manual on post-collapse governance. Question 8. Your relationship with your phone is best described as a research tool that occasionally receives calls I ignore. Oh, there it is, right there. That's it. A device for checking if someone has replied yet. A portal of anxiety I open 200 times a day. There's definitely some of that. A launch pad for ideas the world isn't ready for. Ooh, that's a good one. That's a good one. I don't know if I could say that honestly, though. I don't know if I could say that honestly. My relationship with my phone is best described as a launch pad for ideas the world isn't ready for. That'd be aspirational. Definitely a research tool that occasionally receives calls I ignore. That's very much it. Apologies to everyone who I'm always late getting back to on everything. Question 9 of 10. You're moving to a new city. Your first priority. Find the best bookshop in the nearest library. Walk the streets alone at dusk to feel the city. Research crime statistics, hospital proximity, and earthquake risk. And then D, announce your arrival as if the city was waiting. Well, this is a good one. Probably between B and C. Walk the streets alone at dusk to feel the city. I definitely like to go out and walk around the area where I am and really get familiar, be able to map out all of my immediate neighborhood in my head. But probably, I wouldn't research crime statistics, hospital proximity, and earthquake risk necessarily, but I do really, really thoroughly, rigorously research an area before we move there. So I'm going to say that one. I don't know if there's any rhyme or reason at all to these. I'm very curious to see what the answer is going to be. When someone ghosts you, your dominant thought is, interesting, I shall update my model of human behavior. Or, a long internal monologue worthy of Dostoevsky. C, what did I say? When did I say it? What was the comma? Or was it the comma? And then D, they're lost. Literally, they have lost something irreplaceable. Yeah, definitely. I'm not gonna flatter myself and say D. If someone just ghosts me, which has happened, it's probably something between A and B. Either interesting, I shall update my model of human behavior, or a long internal monologue worthy of Dostoevsky. I'm going to say probably A. All right, what am I? I'm an insufferable polymath! All right, I don't like this test. This test is saying things about me that I don't like. The insufferable polymath. You know too much about things nobody asked about. Excuse me. Allow me to defend myself. You've read more footnotes than most people have read books. You correct people at parties, lose friends over epistemological disagreements, and genuinely believe that if everyone just read more, the world would be fixed. You're exhausting and irreplaceable. Somewhere a librarian is afraid of you. I'm a libertarian! No! Full pathology. Polymath, catastrophist, lunatic, and exile. Yeah, definitely not an exile, but I guess probably between these four options, I would expect to land somewhere between polymath and lunatic. I'm not really much of a catastrophist, but yeah, a man who lives less and thinks more grows ever colder and like a crystal harder. Are you growing hard, Anon? I would imagine that there's probably a lot of insufferable polymaths in our. There's a lot of selection biases that would lead to insufferable polymaths winding up in our little corner of the internet. my wife says I wish I could post the goat meme, which is there's a meme of the goat looking up in the air and looking all smug, and that is her favorite meme of all time. It is literally her. Texas. I haven't seen your name before. Good to see you. It says Mr. Whiskers is a proven venture capitalist. What is Mr. Whiskers? What am I missing here? A grandma getting Nigga Heil Hitler to play his peak internet. Yeah. I don't know how frequently you're gonna find an instance on the internet where a grandma makes Nigga Heil Hitler play. I don't really have anything to add to this, and it's just good. It's just good. Shout out to Kevin Deanna, or you may know him as James Kirkpatrick or Gregory Hood. However you know him, he is now fully out, face fagging as himself, leaning into who he truly is. And this monologue is tremendous, especially with the setting behind it, with the white monster in front of him, and then like the marble and the columns and the Roman bust, all of this, the whole set, leather jacket, and then he delivers this.
Now, of course, what does he mean by American values? Where did those American values come from? What year were they invented? I mean, what are we dealing with right now? We've got the Asian lawyer from the ACLU and Ketanji Brown Jackson wondering what the founders meant. I mean, does anyone else see the absurdity here? So like Chinese birth tourists and every Mayan in some Central American jungle can crawl in here and say they're just as American as we are? We all know what's going on here, and so do they. This whole thing is a farce. What are these American values? Because if we actually want to go to the founding generation, you want to talk about American values, those values were religious fanaticism, white nationalism, race war for land acquisition, and a determination to shoot anyone who says you have to pay your taxes. There's your American values. I mean, this country was founded by racist smugglers, frontier warlords, land speculators, and plantation owners pretending to be Romans. And that's why it's the greatest country in the world. Now,
so true. So true. What a monologue to start the day with. That is, this is a late addition to the show because I scrolled past it and I heard that. And I want someone to, Paul Suda, where are you, sir? I need someone to put that over an epic track. That was tremendous. Let me hear that one more time, the last part.
Determination to shoot anyone who says you have to pay your taxes. There's your American values.
Right here.
I mean, this country was founded by racist smugglers, frontier warlords, land speculators, and plantation owners pretending to be Romans. And that's why it's the greatest country in the world.
Incredible. Racist smugglers, frontier warlords, land speculators, and plantation owners pretending to be Romans. Nailed it. We're going back to the fucking moon. That's why. This was broadcast on CNN live by this young patriot.
Why do you want to be here? Why do you love space? Why do you love being a part of history?
We're going back to the freaking moon, that's why.
Give this man a medal. Mr. President, invite him to the State of the Union. Mark Andreessen said, we're going back to the fucking moon, that's why. And the White House picked it up, said almost Friday and America's going to the moon.
Why do you love being a part of history?
We're going back to the freaking moon, that's why.
Never doom, boys. Never, ever doom. Roman Helmet Guy says, I don't know if you guys have fully internalized that America is about to simultaneously invent superintelligence and monopolize outer space. That's what's happening. There's people on the internet who want to have you discouraged and demoralized and convinced that all is lost, that we're on our heels, we're reeling, breaking away, falling apart. No. America is about to simultaneously invent superintelligence and monopolize outer space. Now, an under-discussed aspect of the Artemis program is the strategy of offering international partners the chance to participate in the Artemis moon missions in exchange for signing the Artemis Accords. The U.S. leverages its unique ability to send foreign astronauts to the moon to promote a treaty that opens up the moon, Mars, and belt to private property rights, freedom of contract, and industrialization. We are going to industrialize space. America is leading the charge, and America is diplomatically obligating the rest of the world into American control channels if they want to benefit from the industrialization of space. This is a key component of the emerging American empire. It's the most ambitious project in international space law since 1967, and the first to explicitly open it up for capitalism. More than 60 nations, including every spacefaring power but Russia and China, have signed. Anyone who still thinks Trump has been bad on diplomacy needs to pay attention. This is potentially the greatest triumph of American foreign policy since the Panama Canal. Here are all the nations, all the blue would be the nations who have signed on. And Section 10, Space Resources, says, number 1, the signatories note that the utilization of space resources can benefit humankind by providing critical support for safe and sustainable operations. Number 2, the signatories emphasize that the extraction and utilization of space resources, including any recovery from the surface or subsurface of the moon, Mars, comets, or asteroids, should be executed in a manner that complies with the Outer Space Treaty and in support of safe and sustainable space activities. The signatories affirm that the extraction of space resources does not inherently constitute national appropriation under Article 2 of the Outer Space Treaty, and that contracts and other legal instruments relating to space resources should be consistent with that treaty. Interesting that they're affirming that simply extracting space resources is not inherently an act of national appropriation. And then the signatories commit to informing the Secretary General of the United Nations, as well as the public and the international scientific community, of their space resource extraction activities in accordance with the Outer Space Treaty. So they're beginning to create a framework for actually accessing and divvying up and processing resources in space, which is very interesting. The idea of trying to transplant private property into space. And I'm not even going to get into the space debate right now, because just merely the fact that we have there is the model of space that everyone assumes, and that's what they are engaging with space conceptually upon. It's based upon that model. So having as you're like developing a concept of property and like staking out specific regions or zones and like holding claim to them and utilizing them and defending them and all the things that go into that, it's fascinating to try to pair those together. You have this like theoretically unlimited expanse, and that doesn't laws of physics don't apply necessarily in the same way there as they do here, and yet we're going to divvy it up and have property rights and all that sort of thing. It's very interesting mashup conceptually, and something. This is why I'm kind of like, I find the debate over what is space, and I'm very open to interesting alternative models of space because of that. Because like I don't get real bent out of shape about it, because I'm expecting this matter is going to be resolved one way or the other very soon. Because the more that humanity goes out into space, whatever space is, whatever the heavens, the firmament, the expanse above us, whatever that thing is, the more that humanity interfaces with it, the more clear it will become what it actually is. So I've entertained some extremely wild schizo speculation theories about it that I'm still not gonna let go of them, because we're getting into territory that, like, for one thing, I can't go validate any of this myself. So I'm literally just taking it on faith. Just assuming like things about consensus of people and evaluating the relative truthfulness of different characters. Like, that's all I can do. Like, it's funny to think about how like the existence of another country that you've never traveled to is something that you just accept on faith. You're just like, oh yeah, Japan is over there. I've never been to Japan. I know people who have been to Japan. They've talked to me about going to Japan. I assume that they're not lying to me. I assume that they aren't participating in some kind of mass delusion. But I can't prove that. I can't like comprehensively, objectively demonstrate it. I just have to accept it as true and act as if it's true. So that's like my relationship to space is I have major issues with certain aspects of the standard model, like on a base like axiomatic level, but I can't go like argue one way or the other, and it's kind of it's a hobby. It's not something I can get really into, because at the end of the day, it is what it is, and the more that people interact with it, the more it's going to be clear whatever it is. And if the standard model is some sort of fake, just as an example, I have seen enough to feel pretty comfortable rejecting the heliocentric model. I think there's enough. I've just seen enough to reject the heliocentric model, and then there's things that naturally follow from that. If you're going to assume geocentrism, then there's a number of things that naturally follow from that. which are wholly inconsistent and totally detonating to the standard model. I'm just going to kind of keep existing within the world as if the standard model is the case, because that's what everything around me is sort of built to assume. But there's got to be some sort of massive opportunity there. That's where opportunity comes from, where you go into the places where nobody else is looking. So if people aren't even looking in particular places because the standard model says that those places shouldn't exist, then the people who are going and looking in those places, even when you're not supposed to, those are the ones who have the they're taking a risk that can ultimately bring forth great opportunities. And I find those opportunities very interesting. Anyways, on a little bit more of a tangible level, we've got March decline in rents is the largest since before the pandemic. And I'll just note, this is coming from an official mouthpiece account of the administration. The administration is touting the fact that, from one of their main outlets, they're touting the fact that rents are going down. There's this idea that they're just wholly committed to the boomers. They just want they're just going to like maximize asset values over everything. But here they're saying rents are going down, which is a proxy for asset prices there's downward pressure on the asset prices. And this is something that they're endorsing from one of their social media accounts. Sunny Milk, you're here. You won. You won the drawing last night. Make sure you go back and listen to the beginning. I took a little video of it and played it. You were the winner. Number 5. You were number 5 on the list. You were the winner. So I'll be sending you $50 later on. So March decline in rents is the largest since before the pandemic. This is from stateline.org. Rents fell most dramatically in Arizona, Colorado, and Texas, which is interestingly 3 of the states that had been they're states that a lot of people from blue states relocated to during and after COVID. Average rents in March were down 1.7% compared with March 2025, the largest year-over-year decline since the pandemic, created more demand for apartments and drove a historic building boom. The March decline was slightly greater than the 1.6 year-over-year drop in July of 2020 at the height of the pandemic chaos, and a widespread flight from urban apartments, according to a new report by Apartment List, a company that posts rental listings online. Eventually, the pandemic and housing shortages pushed up rents as more people sought space for themselves and their families in suburbs in the Sun Belt, with year-over-year increases peaking at 18% in late 2021 and early 2022. This is right about the time, early 2022 is when we moved from Southern California to Texas. And I got my real estate license, and I was doing real estate work, just mostly just like retail real estate work for 2022, 2023, and part of 2024. So I came in and this stretch between Austin and San Antonio was for a number of consecutive quarters was the hottest housing market, local housing market in the country. So the prices were skyrocketing, and then they very quickly have tailed off. The metropolitan areas with the largest rent drops were Phoenix, down 5.8%, Austin, down 6.1%, and Sarasota, Florida, down 8.3%, according to Apartment List. One notable exception was the San Francisco Bay Area, where rents were up 15%. That's insane. Rents were up 15% when there was some other stat. Yeah, right here. Year-over-year increases peaked at 18% in late 2021 and early 2022. And still, right now, San Francisco year-over-year is up 15%. By state, the drops were largest in Arizona, down 4.5%, Colorado down 4.4%, Texas down 3.1%, Florida down 3%, and Tennessee down 2.5%. Among the states that saw increases were North Dakota, up 7.3%. I'd imagine oil field activity is probably driving some of that. Delaware, up 4.2%. Mississippi and West Virginia, both up 4%. And Illinois, up 3.4%. So rents see largest recent decline. So here's a graph for it. And so it's kind of interesting. If you take the COVID like sine wave thing here out of it, and you just go from, what is this, like beginning of 2024? I can't quite read it. It is 2023 September. Okay, so September of 2023 and February of 2020. There's much more of a distinct downward trend here. So we're all the way down now for March 2026, all the way down here, down 1.7%. You can see that it rose a little bit under Trump, which I would imagine is probably because of some of the economic resurgence that was happening under him. But then it was already on its way down in 2020 before it totally plummeted, then shot way, way up, and then has come back down to where it's kind of steadily going down. But definitely since Trump took office again, it's really increased this downward trend. March is a busy month for apartment hunting, so the decline might reflect economic uncertainty that could keep rents falling as they have since 2023. The situation is challenging for operators trying to fill vacancies, but favorable for renters searching in high supply markets. Affordability is improving compared to 2025 nationally and in all regions. However, the modest decreases still leave many renters burdened by housing costs. That's the thing, is like, going down 6% is in absolute terms is actually not that much, but it is a strong sign that at least it's not going the other direction. Yeah, but I thought Trump was only focused on foreign policy. Strange. It's almost like they're actually deporting people, and everything else that they're doing is all sort of accumulates together as something like a plan of some kind. Speaking of deportations, the Trump administration announced and swore in 42 new immigration judges in March alone. Hundreds of activist judges have been fired or quit. Look at this. Most changes Trump made to immigration are administrative. For example, Trump replaced most immigration judges. The asylum denial rates hit an all-time high, at least as far back as October 2020, of 94.7% in February. 94.7% asylum denial rate. Look at this graph. This is when Trump took over, January 2025. Right here, 64.9%. Beautiful. This graph is asylum denials. 9.5 out of 10 asylum submissions are being denied now. Shout out to Prowler. Here is the guy who runs the Appeal to Pragmatism Telegram account. He said, not only is asylum denial at an historic high, self-departure is higher than ever, and work approval is functionally being cut off. So the asylum process is becoming a deportation funnel. Immigrants, how's that for a phrase? The asylum process is becoming a deportation funnel. This under the president who doesn't care about deportations. Immigrants seeking asylum are ordered to countries they've never been to, but end up stuck in limbo. In recent months, thousands of immigrants living legally in the U.S. and waiting for rulings on their asylum claims were suddenly ordered deported to countries where most have no ties. Oh, now removing Jewish occupation of U.S. is all that matters now. Oh, okay. I guess we've moved on. Already. I missed the memo. Now we don't care about deportations. All that matters is removing Jewish power. Here's another strong signal. This is again from the Rapid Response account. New data, capital goods now make up a record 41% of all U.S. goods imports, which is largely specialized equipment to support future manufacturing production. Meanwhile, the trade deficit in 2026 is down 55% relative to the first 2 months of 2025. So what does this mean? This graph here goes all the way back to February of 1992. There's a lot of data contained in this. So capital goods imports as a share of all goods imports. And what's significant about capital goods? Capital goods are goods that are essentially like goods that are being brought in to make more goods. They're productive imports versus just strictly consumptive imports. So you're importing tools or equipment or things that are going to be used in the creation of tools and equipment that will go on to be productive. So we are at 25% in February of 1992. And then in February of 1996, it peaked at what looks like about 31.5%, 32%, something like that. That was until Trump's re-election. And now it has absolutely spiked up to 41%. This sort of, but listen to these two stats in combination with each other. So of all U.S. goods that are imported, you'd have like consumptive goods and productive goods. The capital goods are like the productive goods. This it's a little more complex than that, but just for overview. So the proportion of U.S. imports that are productive is at an all-time high, while the total trade deficit is coming down. So that means that this 41% is actually, it like inflates that 41% effect, because the trade deficit is also being reduced as the productive share of imports is being increased. And what this signals, when you get a huge influx of capital goods, what this signals is incoming jobs, wage growth, so hiring and hiring for higher salaries and generating more productivity, which increases wealth. That's what this is a very, very strong signal of. That is a frickin' spike. Tariffs actually working. Who would have thought? Imagine that. Josh Ham in the chat says, my company gave us Good Friday off as a paid holiday, so time to go fix the garden and do farm work. Patriot. That's a good company. We've got companies giving patriots Good Friday off and paying them for it. And you're blackpilling? Never do, boys. Speaking of U.S. trade, Jameson Greer had an interview here, and Peter Harrell wrote up a summary of it. So he says the Greer interview is worth a listen in full, especially on China. So real quick here, we are going to listen to the interview with the Patriot U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer. If you remember, this is the guy who gave the speech about the American system of political economy at Davos, explicitly citing Alexander Hamilton and referencing Friedrich List, indeed. So this is him talking about, on Bloomberg, about U.S.-China trade ties should be stable over the next year.
So you just got back from meeting with a number of trade partners, and at the moment, global trade is upended by what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz. Did you have an update to give American trading partners about the flow of trade through that critical waterway?
Well, right now, I think the thing to understand is that the United States is generally insulated from a lot of the supply chain effects when it comes to direct commodities and things like that. For a lot of that, we have domestic sourcing. We have sourcing from our partners to the north and south of us and other places. But obviously, we're aware that this has an impact. In other countries, particularly in Asia, we know that their supplies are tight. And so we're watching that really closely. When I was meeting with all of them, this was not particularly high on their agenda of things to discuss with me because we were meeting for other reasons. But we're monitoring the situation given that the supply.
We're what? He said the thing. We're monitoring the situation. The Trump administration, patriots are in control, boys. They're monitoring the situation, as you were.
Of commodities coming out of the Gulf can affect our trading partners in a lot of ways.
And it's not just crude, it's liquefied petroleum gas, which you need, especially in countries like India, to cook. It's fertilizer. Do you have a sense of a timeline?
Well, first of all, any kind of operation, you're focused on objectives, and you don't want to set artificial timelines. When I hear from the Secretary of State or the Secretary of Defense, they talk about operations in terms of weeks. We hope that's the case. The Trump administration has made a lot of headway in its objectives in Iran in terms of destroying ballistic missiles, destroying the Navy, and making progress to make sure that they don't obtain a nuclear weapon.
You met on the sidelines with your Chinese counterpart. China buys the lion's share of Iranian crude. We have seen Chinese vessels given safe passage through the strait. Did this become a focal point of that conversation?
It did not. When I met with my counterpart, Minister Wong, the Ministry of Commerce Minister, this did not come up. We were focused on preparing for the leaders' meeting, which will occur in mid-May. We were talking about
Minister Wong. Nigga's name is Wong. And I have to take this country seriously a pox on the houses of everyone who made me, as an American, have to take seriously a country that has officials with names like Minister Wong.
About the WTO itself and the future of it, or potentially lack thereof, as the case may be. And so
lack thereof? You thinking about getting out?
Well, I wouldn't say that. I would just say that the ability of the World Trade Organization to meet the needs of the moment, addressing structural imbalances, currency issues, huge export-driven surpluses by other countries, the WTO has never been able to address those things, and it won't be going forward. It can barely address issues on its current agenda.
So potentially you want a revamp of the WTO? Is that what you're calling for?
I will tell you that we have called for reform. The Trump administration has put in many proposals, concrete proposals about reform, about how to graduate countries to take on more obligations as they become more developed. We've talked about making sure that countries can adjust their tariff schedules to account for national core interests. And we put forward a reform plan together with a bunch of trading partners at a recent meeting in Cameroon, and there was near consensus on this. Countries like Brazil and Turkey eventually opposed the closing package, which is unfortunate, but it's also kind of exhibit A of how the WTO is unable to address these core challenges.
So what's that? How many different big like treaty organizations, big multilateral councils and such? How many is this now that the Trump administration is either openly hostile to, or they're just like, yeah, you guys are kind of not really worth our time anymore, so you're welcome to make yourselves worth our time. And if you do, then we'll keep working, kind of doing our part. But there's a really clear trend here where the extant globalist model of leadership was essentially getting all these different countries and trying to force them to be indebted and compliant with us. Like, we're gonna intertwine everyone together. Whereas, and so it was a very seductive sort of thing. Whereas Trump it's very masculine. It's very we're going somewhere. We'd love to have you join us in this process, but if you don't want to, that's fine. We're not going to play easy with you. Our posture of leadership toward the rest of the world is, if this institution isn't working, we're not going to be faithful to the institution just because it exists. No, we're going to do what we're going to do, and we can change the institution to organize itself around our priorities, or we will just leave it. We'll just do away with it. And it's not like we're going to do away with it and then just flip the bird to everyone. No, we're going to go proactively develop all these relationships with other countries. But it's very pragmatic, and it's very much, it's instead of being doublespeak, seductive, trying to lure people, create these network chains and stuff of interdependency, it's very much like, your obligation is to do this. This is what works for you. This is what works for your country. Your obligation is to do this, and we're going to hold you to that. We think you need to invest more in your own defense. You can't just depend on us to come bail you out all the time. You need to develop your own defense capacities. And we'll do that through NATO, or we will just take you one-on-one. Either way, we are going to refashion the world in our image in a pragmatic sense, and it's a very masculine approach to it.
The Strait in your conversation with your Chinese counterpart, the president has been pretty direct to European allies. If you want the Strait to open, you should also help us, send vessels, send a minesweeper, send your Navy. If China's the one that's benefiting the most in terms of they're the ones that for years have been supporting this brutal regime, should they also not be on the hook to reopen the Strait?
Good point, Josh Hammy says, Trump interacts with other nations as a man. I will treat you as a sovereign state, but that means you are responsible for what you choose to do. We can prosper together or not. You choose. And if you notice, this is the way that he interacts with the UK, with France, with list your country. He also interacts that way with Iran. He's speaking to them in the very same way. He's constantly talking about his vision for a bright, prosperous, successful future for the country. And he's constantly directing his messaging at the Iranian citizens, we see our role as taking a burden off of you, and then we want to ensure that you're left in a position where you can thrive. Now, if we're forced to the point where the only way to resolve this situation is going to be by bombing you into the Stone Age, we're not going to take that off the table. Because we're not going to have someone just calling our bluff or whatever. No, When we negotiate, we're going to negotiate in good faith, and that means if we tell you we're going to fucking kill you, then we're going to fucking kill you if you drive us to that point. But we would prefer not to.
Well, listen, this is a decision for China, and I'll obviously let the president and Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense decide how they're going to align with other countries in reacting to the Strait of Hormuz closing. Again, it affects these other countries much more than it affects us. Other countries have been working with Iran to figure out arrangements to get out oil, gas, fertilizer, and all these other things. But it is clearly in the interest of the world community to make sure, not only to make sure that the Strait is open, but to make sure that Iran doesn't get a nuclear weapon, Iran doesn't empower its terror proxies in the region. The world would be much safer if the world was aligned on taking care of the Iran issue.
It's also very interesting. Like he's on one hand, they talk about like the world being aligned against it, but also they're like throughout this whole thing, the United States has had no problem with individual nations going and working something out with the Iranians. They've been acknowledging it. They've been supporting it. They even Trump talked about trying to ensure that the flows could keep going for the sake of China, like making sure China keeps getting the stuff that they need. So it's like the strait is closed, but also individual nations are going to Iran, negotiating something with them. Iran's making money off of the strait, off of ships going through there. They're doing this like toll booth thing. And the Trump administration's not only not trying to stop that or stand in front of it, they're like, yeah, go do it. Yeah, strait's open. Anyone go down. You go negotiate your own thing. You go figure something out with them. But interestingly, Iran's negotiating position is almost strengthened. You notice that? Like, if Iran wants to negotiate some sort of deal with like, you know, Japan or Vietnam or France or whomever, they actually, now that the strait is closed and people are really like, oh, we need to get access. We need to get our ships through here. It's almost like Iran's ability to negotiate. Isn't that kind of interesting? Almost like there's some kind of an alignment between the Trump administration and some powers within Iran. And the goal here isn't to completely destroy Iran. Very, very interesting.
Prepare for this trip. There's a lot of reporting that China, like Russia, is helping Iran, even when it comes to not just supply chains, but targeting U.S. troops. Is this going to be on the agenda when the president meets? Is this even potentially a reason why the trip could maybe get postponed?
In past meetings between the presidents, they've always talked about conflicts and hotspots. In the past, they've talked about Ukraine and Russia. They've talked about Iran. I assume that they'll talk about these things again. With respect to your question, is there going to be a delay in the meeting? I haven't heard talk about that, neither internally. I didn't hear that from my Chinese counterpart when I talked to him last week.
When it comes to the tariffs right now, there's Section 301 tariffs that you're looking into when it comes to China. And we've seen China actually have their own announcement that they're going to investigate U.S. companies. This tit for tat we might see in the trade between Beijing and Washington, back to where we're almost what it feels like a year ago. Do you think that's going to hinder the U.S. from getting back to the 20% level they were at before IEEPA was struck down?
I don't think so. When you look back to the Busan agreements, the agreements we achieved with the Chinese last year, we were seeking stability. We were seeking to achieve a level of tariff application on one side and a flow of rare earth minerals and things from the other side. Both sides want stability. Both sides want to see continuity. The Chinese know that the United States is trying to control for our giant trade deficit we've had with China for a long time, which went down by 30% last year, by the way. So I don't think it's going to...
But China's imports to other countries into the United went up, and then those countries are importing to the United States. Don't you have an issue with transshipment at the moment?
So there's always been an issue with transshipment.
Transshipment?
But when you look at our shipments from third countries outside of China, since April, right, since Liberation Day, that deficit has gone down by 17%. So while there may be some transshipment, overall our trade deficit is going down. It's going down with China. It's going down with the rest of the world. It's going exactly the right direction. At the same time, wages are going up in America. Productivity is going up.
Do you think
it's so fascinating listening to these media mouthpieces, the way they talk about? It's like, well, are you going to be able to get the tariff level back up to 20% with China like it was before IEEPA was struck down? And he's like. It's not like we sat down and decided that our goal is that China needs to have a 20% tariff. Tariffs are not this thing that are like enshrined in amber that you like, once you establish a tariff, it stays that way forever. They've been like openly, explicitly saying the goal is for the tariffs to ultimately not be necessary. The tariffs are a tool that can be moved and changed and modulated up and down to achieve the desired outcome. And so we're making progress toward achieving that desired outcome. The goal is not like establish something and then it just reigns that way for all time. specific percentages or whatever. This is this very the like mainstream liberal perspective, the whole model of governance that we've been dominated by for the last, I don't know, however long, is very autistic like this. It's like, no, we have to come up with the exact perfect dialed in arrangement of agreements and treaties and whatever that we lock it in into this perpetual motion machine. And the conservative side of this is like, if we could just get the right perpetual motion machine and write the right words on paper around it, then we can go back to just grilling, and the government will like run itself and it won't oppress us. You can see how that conservative instinct will actually lend itself very much to eventually, when it gets exasperated enough, it's like, give me the sword through the Gordian knot. Give me the king. Give me the neutral artificial intelligence agent that's just going to decide things. Where we just give it its programming and then we just leave it alone and let it run itself. That you can see how the conservative, quote unquote, limited government sort of mentality can actually transmogrify very quickly into just straight up, give me the all powerful entity that will just dictate something to be so. They want the house that requires no maintenance. Right. Which is obviously impossible. Which is why the character of the people is of the utmost importance. You need to have the ultimately, I think the most natural, if I was to sort of conceptualize what I'd imagine the America as it comes into its own as a strong nationalist empire, which I know these are sort of conflicts in terms, but I think that's sort of something that those are like the two instincts that America is kind of pulling together. Strong nationalism with the American system of political economy that can then be duplicated and exported while retaining that walled garden effect. It's like you want to have the constitutional liberal order with all the freedoms and liberties and everything, but it's something that is enforced and upheld by an absolutely powerful autocratic monarch. So you get the liberal order aesthetic, but it is something that is upheld and sustained as a service that is provided by the all powerful head.
You're going to get to the 20% level?
Well, I can't prejudge the investigations, right? At Section 301, we have to go through the legal process. We have to collect information. It's quite public. It's quite transparent. We know what the nature of the deal is that we struck with the Chinese. So we will see. All I know is that the president, for sure, is going to keep protecting our economy. He's going to protect our producers so we can continue to have increased production in the U.S., increased wages here.
If China plays hardball, though,
these guys like Jameson Greer, these are the most valuable members of the administration, frankly. The guys who are just laser focused. They're not going to get pulled out into all of the debates and the drama and everything. They stay in their lane, and they are just relentlessly disciplined, focused operators.
Not just with their own investigations, but potentially bringing rare earths back into the fore. I know they have basically till October. There's a deal on the table. Potentially then, would you look to maybe decrease the tariff level?
Well, from our perspective, we're looking for stability. We're trying to get the trade deficit reduced. We're trying to increase manufacturing in the United States, and we're trying to increase real wages. And all of that is happening.
She's still locked into this same mindset of like, you have this like specific numbers and stuff of things you've put out. And so if you had a 20% tariff on China once, then that must mean that your goal is to just have a 20% tariff on Chinese goods in perpetuity. And what he keeps reiterating is that this is not just the perspective of America, but it's the perspective of China as well, is we want a stable, we want a balance. We want something that is stable, that actually can be productively beneficial going forward. It's going to have to keep being moderated as different technologies are introduced and whatever, but the goal is not a specific tariff regime. The goal is to have a balance of trade. Whatever that means, that can be a moving target, and so you need to have the flexibility to constantly move around and optimize for that target. But it's not the same as like, we're going to have this established we're gonna have a deal that we signed that agrees that in perpetuity there is going to be specific tariffs of specific percentages or like specific dollar amounts or whatever. No, we're looking for right now there's this massive imbalance, and this isn't good for either of us. It creates major strategic vulnerabilities for the Americans and for the Chinese. So we want to bring this into some sort of an equilibrium. And things like tariffs are just tools for that purpose.
So we don't see a need to change our policy. The Chinese want stability. We want stability. I actually see a positive agenda with China going forward, where we learn to manage our trade with each other, where we pick the kinds of things we want to be selling to each other, things that are mostly non-sensitive, to avoid some of the national security elements that prove challenging in negotiations. I see stability with China over the next year.
When it comes to this extension on rare earths, are you going to need one in October? Or will you think the United States is in a place where we don't need an extension?
Well, we've made a lot of progress. We have a few months, so I think we'll assess that down the road. We have Project Vault, where we're stockpiling a lot of critical minerals and rare earths. We have new projects in the United States to mine, process, and manufacture rare earths, including permanent magnets that we need for different motors. We're working with our counterparts and our trading partners, Australia, the EU, Japan, Mexico, to find projects we can do together to increase supply chain security.
How much will rare earths be on the table of this discussion with the President and Xi Jinping in May?
So when we met in Paris with our Chinese counterparts a couple of weeks ago, we talked about rare earths. The process with the Chinese is working fairly well. There are a few things here and there where we highlighted that we didn't feel like we were getting rare earths in a timely fashion, and we highlighted that to our partners. They took note of that and have it under consideration. So the presidents will talk about it if they need to. Our hope and expectation is that we're able to manage a lot of it between now and then at the staff level.
Do you think you're going to have to meet your counterparts again before the big leader meeting in Beijing?
I don't think we're going to need to do that, particularly. When we were in Paris, we reached general agreement on the types of outcomes we want for the leaders' meeting, and right now our deputies and our staff are in regular communication to try to land all those outcomes.
Can you give us any sense of what the main deliverables are going to be in Beijing?
I think that one of them, and there's been a little bit of coverage on this, we've been talking about a board of trade, a U.S.-China board of trade, which really will be a mechanism to help manage trade. Over the past 10 years or so, as the United States has tried to eliminate its trade deficit with China, figure out its export control situation, if we can formalize the mechanism a little bit to make sure that we can agree on things we are selling to each other. For the U.S., we want to be selling Boeings. We want to be selling medical devices, pharmaceuticals, ag products, things like that. The Chinese want to be selling things to us, and we're willing to buy things like, low-tech consumer goods and things like that, certain commodities that maybe the Chinese have that we don't. And so establishing that type of mechanism at the leaders' meeting and then going through a process of figuring out how to optimize trade with each other, that's going to be a big deliverable.
So that last point there is very interesting because the general kind of status quo is that U.S. and China are somewhere between hostile and just they're not necessarily open enemies, but like there's this general consensus that the United States and China are going to go to war with each other. So establishing a formal trade partnership like that, and not just like signing a trade deal together, but actually having a board of trade, a formal diplomatic relationship between the two. The fact that this is an agenda item for the United States should be a strong signal that the Trump administration is not China hostile. They're hostile to the current state, and this current state cannot persist. But I think this is a pattern that you can see throughout their relationships with all these different nations. Even Iran, they're actively bombing Iran right now, but they're also making strong signals that their goal is not for China to be for Iran to be a perpetual enemy. They're like, the current state of things cannot continue. Here is our list of demands, and they're actually pretty broad. It's like, here's the things you can't do. We're going to establish ourselves at a point where you have agreed, and we have a method of enforcing that you are not going to do that. Once we've reached that threshold, then we want to be at peace. We want you to be thriving and prosperous, and our goal is not to be perpetually at war with one another. Superior Beast says mutual destruction necessitates mutual partnerships or whatever it's supposed to be. Yeah, there's a very strong... I mean... Trump likes making deals. Trump doesn't. This is the sense in which Trump is anti-war. He's like, why go to war when you can make a deal? Now, if you can't make a deal, you might have to go to war. But your first and overwhelming and dominant instinct should be, let's make a deal. And we'll go to war to the extent that we can't make a deal. To the extent that I need to prove to you that it's more in your interest to make a deal than it is to keep going to war. So here's Peter Harrell's summary of that interview. He says, first, the strategic goal is a managed trade relationship where U.S. and China agree on what we buy and sell each other, and in which trade is predictable. For what it's worth, I agree with Greer that a highly managed trade relationship is the best near and midterm outcome for U.S.-China trade. So it's not like a free and open relationship. It's highly managed. Like, there's mutual suspicion, but there's a desire for that mutual suspicion to turn into mutual, like building and developing a relationship so that suspicion, like, if you have this antithetical hostile relationship to each other, then that amplifies the sorts of things that drive the suspicion, and it becomes like a self-licking ice cream cone. But you can also revert that the other way. You can begin to build and develop trust with one another, engaging in good faith, and lay down the terms for a productive relationship. Number two, under this approach, the U.S. will buy, quote, low-tech consumer goods, potentially some commodities the U.S. doesn't have, etc. China will buy Boeing's medical devices, pharma, and ag commodities. I assume energy as well, though Greer did not mention it specifically. One of the ways they're going to be doing this as well is for China, like, you need to increase consumption among your own people. Like right now, America has been over-consuming and underproducing, and China has been overproducing and under-consuming. So part of this balance is getting China to consume more and getting America to produce more. Trade will be managed by a board of trade, the launch of which will be a Trump-Xi summit deliverable. And that would be like this Trump-Xi summit is a pretty big deal. Now it could wind up just kind of being less of a big deal, but there's the possibility here, particularly with the timing, like the implications of China and Iran, and if the Iran resolution ties in with the Trump-Xi summit, and there is the announcement of a board of trade between China and the United States going forward, that's going to be pretty earth-shattering. Greer cannot prejudge whether the forthcoming Section 301 investigation will fully restore the 20% tariff rate on China that existed prior to the February SCOTUS decision. Legally, this is true. Greer can't prejudge a 301 investigation outcome. And again, like you can tell that the goal is not, like, we're not sitting here waiting, like twiddling our thumbs, being like, okay, come on. We need to get the 20% tariff back. Like that's not even within the frame of their operations right now. That said, both the U.S. and China are seeking stability and continuity, and the U.S. wants to reduce the trade deficit and is committed to protecting its domestic economy. And then probably no more ministerial level meetings prior to the Trump-Xi summit, with negotiations being handled by deputies and staff. Greer said that he has not heard any discussion of pushing the summit back further beyond mid-May. So that'll be another thing to watch for, to see if that summit gets pushed back. What this would indicate is they basically have agreement on the majority of the framework, and they're just hammering out the details now with lower level people and setting up the actual details of the specific meeting for the two primary executives. And my guess is that this is probably a major component of it right here. Because like the way that China has built themselves up, if the United States is like, yeah, we want you to buy our sophisticated stuff, and we're going to buy a bunch of like cheap consumer goods from you, China's not going to accept that straight out. There's going to have to be some sort of meet in the middle on that. Yeah, we got bots showing up. That's probably a good sign, I guess. If the bots think the channel is worth spamming on, then maybe that's good. Please do share the show, folks, and remember to tip your streamer. tips.kingpilled.com. Now, on this subject, Tom Luongo says ARC is coming. Here is the outline. ARC, of course, is this hypothesized sort of three-way global domination arrangement between America, Russia, and China. So let's read this article. Beijing Spring Agenda, Think Bigger. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has a program for the Beijing summit now scheduled for mid-May. The agenda is tariffs, rare earths, agricultural purchases, the Busan trade truce extension. Diplomatic business as usual. Think bigger. Save the truce extension and rip up the rest of the agenda because it's for a world that no longer exists. Recent events have suddenly aligned all the relevant stakeholders for something more immediate and enduring. The Iran war is a diplomatic force majeure. You cannot negotiate the terms of trade when the rails carrying the trading system are burning. Fix the rails first. Use the next 6 weeks to map a sequence of meetings that involve the United States and China jointly securing control of Iran's nuclear materials, reestablishing control over oil and critical mineral supply chains, and resetting and expanding the entire multilateral nuclear non-proliferation treaty regime to cover emerging autonomous and AI-driven WMD threats. It's very interesting. I haven't heard someone propose this before. This is interesting. Expanding the nuclear non-proliferation treaty regime to also cover emerging autonomous and AI-driven weapons of mass destruction threats. Context first. There will be no peace agreement with the Iranian regime. At best, maybe enforce better behavior. The Islamic Republic is not a rational government. It is a theocracy whose stated purpose, from its founding documents to today, is the global advance of an Islamist revolutionary project. Its instruments are assassinations, proxy armies, missile arsenals, and, insidiously, the systematic exploitation of Western immigration systems to embed political networks in democratic legislatures, universities, and media organizations across Europe, Canada, and the United States. Secretary of State Marco Rubio named this directly at the Munich Security Conference in February. The regime that mined Hormuz and enriched uranium to 60% is running the military version of the political operation of its other Islamist allies. The IRGC cannot accept American terms without abandoning the revolution. That is an identity, not a negotiating position. The relevant interlocutor for what comes next is not Tehran, it is Beijing. Now, when I read these sorts of things, now, I read them as this whole, like, the theocracy, the apocalyptic global mission of this theocracy is just like a cynical cover for maintaining, for certain financial interests, to maintain this outpost that can be used for assassinations, proxy armies, missile arsenals, and the systematic exploitation of Western immigration systems to embed political networks in democratic legislatures, universities, and media organizations across Europe, Canada, and the United States. This is what Iran has been. Iran has been an apparatus that hides behind, not to say that the religious component of it isn't real, it's that it's used as a facade, as a front, it's capitalized upon to embed this sort of apparatus as a means of manipulating and controlling Europe, Canada, and the United States. And also, it goes beyond that as well, but primarily, I mean, if you control Europe, Canada, the United States, you control the world. So what institution, what organization, what network of interests happen to be positioned such that it could embed this thing that controls Europe, Canada, and the United States? Gee, I wonder. This also would be why the war the Trump administration has been conducting is targeted toward the IRGC specifically. And why they're like, we're going to kill you or we're going to destroy your shit until you come to an agreement, because you're going to have to fundamentally change your identity. I'll call you back to Matt Dines, the video I played for you guys the other day, where he referred to the IRGC as effectively like a private equity with a private military. China built SIPs and yuan settlement infrastructure to reduce dependence on American financial architecture. It found out in February that its most urgent vulnerability is maritime and supply chain security that Beijing cannot provide for itself, not dollar dominance. No SIPs transaction protects a tanker in a mined strait. Beijing was quietly resupplying a regime it could not control in exchange for discounted crude that suddenly could not move. China's energy supply chain was hostage, not to a strategic partner, but to a theology and a war that can only be ended by an incapacitated supreme leader's decree or total defeat for the regime. Beijing's acceptance of the summit rescheduling and its staying at the table since, keeping communication open by managing the optics of a conflict at first publicly condemned, demonstrate that China wants this summit. What Beijing is bringing to May is understanding that the United States is the only power operationally able to keep global trading routes open. And I would say that China, like this may understate China's own force projection capacity, but it's the United States can make it very, very expensive for China to maintain the status quo, to the point where it just doesn't make it's a source of instability for China as well. And there isn't really, the United States and China don't have to have this oppositional hostile relationship. They can be competitors, but they don't need to be existentially in tension with one another. So if the United States makes this expensive enough, they're incentivizing China, and they can honestly communicate this. They're like, we're going to keep being a pain in your ass until you actually engage with us in good faith and we can negotiate something sustainable. And I think this is also part of the reason why when Trump said the expectation with Iran is it's going to be 4 to 5 weeks, I think that also corresponds with the upcoming summit with China, and that the resolution of Iran is going to involve China. And part of that summit is going to deal with, or even the main component of it is going to deal with the resolution and the establishment of a new era with respect to Iran and the Strait of Hormuz and the entire Gulf region. The military objectives of Washington and Jerusalem are identical. Ballistic missiles destroyed, Navy destroyed, no nuclear weapons. As these objectives are achieved, the space for Iranians to determine their own political future expands. American and Israeli operations create that space, they do not fill it. That is the discipline the emerging Trump foreign policy doctrine of MAGA realism learned from the fatal overreach of Bush 43. China may not care who runs Iran if oil flows to it. The United States sees regime change as a bonus. There is nothing inconsistent for either of them in Israel continuing to work toward an environment where the Iranian people can safely define what kind of government they want, if Washington and Beijing control the oil while they do, which is I think this is a good delineation of the both converging and diverging interests at play here. So I think it's realistic probably that this sort of architecture has been being developed. They've been laying the groundwork for this, and obviously they've moved tons and tons of assets into the region. So a strike was something, actually going in militarily into Iran like they have, was something that's been on the table and been in the works for a long time. The actual go button may have been pressed by Israel, but even then it was not Israel pressing the go button. It was Israel persuading the United States to press the go button. But it was pressing the go button on something that was already planned. Something they were clearly in position to do in the first place. So it's not like Israel said, we need to press the go button now, and this fundamentally changes everything. It was just, we need to press the go button now, and the United States is like, all right, we've got our assets in region, we've got everything in place, let's press the go button. And then it's like, you don't know exactly necessarily when things exactly are going to end and how they're going to end, et cetera, et cetera. Once the go button is pressed, then things become more fluid. But there's an overarching framework to this. And Israel has their own agenda and essentially are now on a leash. Which creates a separate conversation is, are they sabotaging the leash? Are they, when do you yank the leash and how hard and what happens when you do it? This is another separate issue that ultimately has to be dealt with at some point or another. So Israel inducing the United States into pressing the go button is also Israel accelerating the timetable for when the composition of the leash question has to be resolved. And ultimately, Washington and Beijing are going to be the major determining parties in that. And the rest of the world is just going to have to deal with it. I would say the next most significant parties would be the Gulf states. And then you've got like Europe and then the other Southeast Asian nations. What would both leaders walk out of Beijing holding as success? A joint U.S.-China declaration committing both powers to IAEA-supervised extraction and verification of Iran's highly enriched uranium stockpile, with the United States providing the operational capability. Marines are arriving to execute, likely waiting only for further IRGC degradation. It would be the most consequential non-proliferation action since the Nunn-Lugar Cooperative Threat Reduction Program secured the Soviet nuclear arsenal after 1991. President Trump could accurately call it the most important nuclear security agreement in 30 years. And anyone who's been watching the Labe for a little while knows that nuclear security is something that is genuinely extremely important to Trump and has been a top priority for him for basically as long as he's been engaged in politics. The second deliverable is a framework for joint maritime security. U.S. naval capability paired with Chinese political standing among Gulf states and Asian importers would replace what is forming on the ground right now. IRGC toll booths collecting transit fees in yuan, cargo manifests vetted by a paramilitary. That is extortion with a flag on it. A rules-based passage regime jointly underwritten by Washington and Beijing converts it into a trading infrastructure. Tankers move. Insurance markets function. Energy prices normalize. Everyone except IRGC wins. And I would say it as like recognizing what the IRGC actually is. This is everyone except the powers that stand behind the IRGC win. Because whatever, like by definition, whatever remains of the IRGC is winning because they're not dying. The NPT review conference opens April 27 before the summit. Washington and Beijing arriving with a joint agenda on Iran's fissile material would signal to every nuclear and near-nuclear state that the two great powers are serious on the non-proliferation case, with or without the 67 treaty. The effect on North Korean calculations alone would be significant. Taiwan is the third meeting. The post-war multilateral order failed, visibly, completely, and in front of everyone. What might replace it is two great powers, pragmatic and transactional, sobered by what an uncontrolled theocracy just inflicted on both, deciding that stability is a joint project. Treasury Secretary Bessent walks into Beijing with one frame. We are here to build the infrastructure that makes everything else possible. The tariffs, the rare earths, the technology access, IP protection conversations happen in the next meeting, with considerably more goodwill once the foundation is in place. That is the deal of the century. And it's available right now. And then Tom says, people keep asking me for a concise summary of my worldview. Here it is. Then think through SOFR replacing LIBOR. Higher for longer from Powell forced the BOE and subsidiaries to become the largest holder of U.S. Treasuries. 10-7 was City of London betraying Israel, using Netanyahu's hatred of Iran against him to spiral us to World War next. Everything Obama did as president was to undermine American ability to fight when the time came. Trump has fully exposed the depth of the rot in U.S. institutions. Now he's being railroaded into having to suspend the Constitution to fulfill the MAGA mandate because there is no moving forward with our current legislature and judiciary. Last night, he told you the chaos in the Middle East is not his responsibility. He's called Europe's bluff and Lloyd's bluff. You want Gulf oil? Go take it or buy it from us. Bibi is pissed, if he's still alive. The Iran we have contended with for Britain's profit is gone. Long live Iran. Everyone, please take Trump's deal. It's the key to humanity's future. And you may have heard Tom recently referenced this article, signal boosted by Blaine Holt here. Dangerous Intellectuals podcast is Blaine Holt. He says, incredibly significant piece, articulate encapsulation of where World War next is right now. Trump is going to steal the Declaration of Independence, I think. So here is this article. This Substack post, no filter, just facts.substack.com. Vivify Mariposa wrote this on March 24, 2026. The Empire That Never Died. How Britain used conflict to build the invisible system that controls your money. The system took 300 years to build. One doctrine is dismantling it. Last September, I published Britain Still Owns America. That piece named the mechanism. It showed the Louisiana Purchase was financed by Barings Bank of London. It showed the Federal Reserve coordinates with the Bank of England. It showed Five Eyes intelligence keeps American policymakers dependent on British assessments. Many of you recognized it immediately because you've been watching the same pattern without a name for it. A friend asked me recently why I support President Trump when the media keeps saying his policies are failing. My answer was simple. I do not follow the media. I follow patterns in history. That conversation is the reason this article exists. This is written for the people who are trained to follow the narrative and ignore the facts and their own instincts. The people who know something is wrong but cannot name it, because the system that is wrong is also the system that gave them their vocabulary. The empire that never died. If you have read my previous work, you'll recognize pieces of this. The Federal Reserve pattern runs through the price of financial independence. The division mechanism lives inside we are living another civil war. The vocabulary swap is documented in patriotism is not a dirty word. This article is where those threads connect into one system. Not an introduction this time, the full picture. People keep asking how a tiny island nation with 67 million people still runs significant portions of the global financial system more than 75 years after its empire supposedly ended. That is the wrong question. The right question is, did the empire ever actually end? It did not. It transformed. The expensive parts were shed, the profitable parts were kept. And the most profitable part of all was never colonies or territory. It was conflict. Specifically, the ability to create, sustain, and profit from permanent conflict in strategic locations around the world. This article follows the money, not the narrative, the money. The first thing you need to understand about empires. Empires do not die, they mutate. Rome did not disappear. Its legal system, its language, its administrative frameworks became the foundation of every European government that came after it. The Roman Catholic Church carried Roman institutional structure for centuries after the last emperor fell. The British Empire did not disappear either. It held roughly a quarter of the world's land and a quarter of the world's population at its peak. After World War II, it looked like it was collapsing. Colonies gained independence, flags came down. By 1997, when Britain handed Hong Kong to China, the last major piece appeared to be gone. But empires that plan ahead do not put all their power in flags. The British ruling class understood something that most people still do not. You do not need to govern territory to control it. You need to control the mechanisms that make territory function. The insurance, the banking, the currency systems, the intelligence networks, the legal frameworks. Britain kept all of those, and to keep them relevant, it needed something else. It needed conflict to keep producing risk, because risk is where the money is. It's fascinating to me that I've been on this kick lately talking about like the connections between the Roman Empire, the British Empire, the American Empire, talking like, and here we have someone completely different who's been slogging away on this on Substack for months or years now. Isn't it funny how the world works? This is exactly some of the stuff that I've been trying to say. It's just said so much better than I ever could. Empires that plan ahead do not put all their power in flags. That's a line. The British ruling class understood something that most people still do not. You do not need to govern territory to control it. Those of you who have been listening to Tom for a while, you might recognize this as another way of saying what he has about stock versus flow. He's talked about it with respect to currency, like controlling the stock of currency versus the flow of the currency. And the Austrians tend to over-index on the stock side of things. But you can think about this in terms of territory as well, where the stock of the currency is equivalent to the territory, and then the flow of the currency would be the mechanisms that make territory function. And the insurance model, the banking model, the currency systems model, the intelligence model, the legal framework model, all of the models that govern basically every single country in the world today, with some significant exceptions, are built upon or heavily influenced by all of these models. Not just one of them, all of them. How many different nations in the world have some sort of British parliamentary structure? Because they were all influenced by the system that was globalizing itself. That's how the system instantiated itself, was by sort of retaining on the face of it, like sovereignty or independence for those colonial holdings. But what were the colonial holdings obtaining sovereignty or independence into? They were obtaining sovereignty or independence into the exact model that was being exported to them. And so then when they need experts, when they need financing, when they need consulting or any of these sorts of things, they're going to be consulting from people, from the experts who are have emerged from the exact same model. So it doesn't even have to be I think people sort of sometimes imagine like this conspiracy where they sat down and they sketched out, okay, here's what we're going to do, and we're going to play all these other nations like marionettes. And there's some truth to that. There were schemers and planners and geopolitical engineers, but it's also just the latent incentives that are inherent to the system as it exports itself. People who grow up within it naturally export it. They naturally embody it. They naturally make decisions along those terms. That's the frame. That's the 3x5 card of allowable opinion that they operate within. That's how the regime sustains itself, even after it seems as if the empire has collapsed on its surface. It collapsed up into this abstracted realm, which is actually even hard. It's even more difficult to extract the regime then, because it's not like you can just go conquer an army or something, or like overthrow a king or whatever. Now you're dealing with the latent beliefs and paradigm that the very people operate within. The architecture they built. Before getting to the conflict, you need to understand the financial architecture, because the conflict feeds it directly. In November of 1910, 6 men boarded a private train in New Jersey under assumed names. They called themselves the First Name Club. No last names used. Not with waitstaff, not with anyone. One brought a borrowed shotgun to sell the duck hunting cover story. They were not duck hunting. They were going to Jekyll Island, Georgia, to write the Federal Reserve Act. The 6 represented J.P. Morgan, Rockefeller, and Kuhn Loeb & Co. Together, they controlled a quarter of the world's wealth. Frank Vanderlip, one of them, later wrote, quote, "If it were to be exposed publicly that our particular group had gotten together and written a banking bill, that bill would have had no chance whatever of passage by Congress. They knew the public would stop it, so the public was kept out." The Federal Reserve Act passed in December of 1913. The United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit later stated plainly in Lewis v. United States, the reserve banks are not federal instrumentalities, but are independent, privately owned, and locally controlled corporations. End quote. That is a federal court, not a theory. The 12 Federal Reserve banks are private corporations. Member banks own stock in them. They receive a fixed 6% annual dividend by law. They participate in selecting the people who set U.S. monetary policy. The Federal Reserve does not receive funding from Congress. It funds itself. Now, here's what most people do not ask. Why did the men at Jekyll Island who did the men at Jekyll Island copy this structure from? The Bank of England. Founded by royal charter in 1694 under King William III and Queen Mary II, both original shareholders. Privately owned by City of London shareholders for 252 years, from 1694 until nationalization in 1946. The template the American banking cartel explicitly studied and replicated. Paul Warburg, who directed the Jekyll Island proceedings, had spent years studying the Bank of England before immigrating from Germany. The Aldrich Plan was openly modeled on it. The Federal Reserve and the Bank of England are not two separate systems. They're two pillars of the same system. London holds the older infrastructure, the offshore secrecy network, and the insurance monopoly. Washington holds the dollar and the military backstop. the Bank of England and the Eurodollar. After World War II, Britain had lost the visible empire but held something more valuable: the world's trust in London as a financial center. In 1956, London bankers, with the direct encouragement and support of the Bank of England, invented the Eurodollar. Dollar-denominated instruments created and traded in London outside U.S. regulatory reach. The Bank of London did not stumble into this. It was deliberate policy to preserve London's position as the center of global finance when dollar dominance threatened to displace sterling. When Nixon ended the dollar's link to gold in 1971 and Kissinger negotiated the petrodollar deal with Saudi Arabia, Gulf oil revenues flowed into two places: U.S. Treasury securities and Eurodollar deposits at private commercial banks in London. Those London banks lent those petrodollars to Latin America to buy oil, a closed loop generating fees at every stage for the banks in the middle. When Volcker raised U.S. interest rates to 19.1% in 1981, Latin American countries could not service that dollar-denominated debt. Mexico defaulted in 1982. Argentina, Brazil, and Venezuela followed. The banks got bailed out, the workers got austerity. Working-class communities across an entire continent paid for a decision made by unelected bankers in Washington and coordinated with London. That is the financial architecture. But an architecture that profits from risk needs risk to profit from. That is where Iran and Israel come in. The bank behind the banks. Above the Federal Reserve and the Bank of England sits the Bank for International Settlements. Founded in Basel, Switzerland in 1930, it is the bank for central banks. Its 63 members represent 95% of global GDP. The Federal Reserve sits on its governing body, so does the Bank of England. The BIS holds 10 to 15% of all central banks' monetary reserves. It sets global banking standards through the Basel Accords. Every major bank in the world must comply. Its decisions are made behind closed doors. No press conferences, no transcripts, no vote counts. Its founding capital came from the same banking families who built the Federal Reserve. No elected body approved this arrangement, no voter chose it, it simply exists, and it has existed since 1930. Every major bank in the world answers to it. Lloyd's, the insurance monopoly on global conflict. Lloyd's of London was born in a coffee house on Tower Street in 1688. Merchants, sailors, and ship owners gathered there. The underwriters met there because Lloyd provided the latest shipping intelligence. They wrote their names under the terms of the risk they agreed to cover. That is where the word underwriter comes from. By 1774, the underwriters formalized as an association. In 1871, Parliament incorporated it by law. What began as a coffee house became the most powerful insurance marketplace in the world. Lloyd's is not an insurance company. It is a marketplace governed by acts of Parliament, within which syndicates of financial backers pool and spread risk. In 2024, the market wrote £52.1 billion in gross premiums. Roughly 40 to 50% of that came from North America. The United States is Lloyd's largest single market. Lloyd's is the largest surplus lines insurer in the U.S. and the largest non-U.S. domiciled reinsurer operating in America. The reinsurer is when insurance companies take out insurance on the things that they've insured. When U.S. insurance companies face a risk too large, too unusual, or too catastrophic for their capacity, they go to Lloyd's. Nuclear facilities, satellites, oil rigs in hostile waters, cargo ships transiting war zones. Roughly 90% of global trade moves by sea. The Strait of Hormuz, 21 miles wide at the mouth of the Persian Gulf, handles approximately 21 million barrels of oil per day, roughly 20% of the world's seaborne oil supply. The oil that powers Japan, South Korea, India, China, and Europe passes through that strait. For over 300 years, Lloyd's has been the primary underwriter of marine war risk insurance for the tankers transiting that corridor. Control the insurance and you control who can sail. Control who can sail and you control the energy supply of the global economy. When shipping lanes become dangerous, war risk premiums spike, sometimes by 400% in a matter of days. Every tanker operator, every shipping company, every cargo carrier in the world has to pay Lloyd's if they want to sail through contested waters. There is no alternative at that scale. Conflict is not a problem for Lloyd's. Conflict is the product. The numbers prove it. When Houthi attacks on Red Sea shipping began in late 2023, war risk premiums surged 20-fold within weeks. When the U.S. and Israel launched military operations against Iran in early 2026, all ship owners faced a 4-fold to 5-fold jump in premiums. Ships with American, British, or Israeli connections paid 3 times more than everyone else. For a single modern tanker worth $130 million, one transit through a designated war zone could cost over $1 million in war risk premium alone. That is not a side effect of conflict, that is the business model. Iran and the destruction of Persia. In 1908, Britain struck oil in Persia. The Anglo-Persian Oil Company, which later became British Petroleum, gave Britain a chokehold over Persian energy that lasted for decades. For Britain, Persia was not a country, it was a resource. In 1951, Iranian Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh nationalized the Iranian oil industry. He wanted the revenue from Iranian oil to go to Iranians. Britain responded with a naval blockade and economic sanctions. When that was not enough, MI6 and the CIA jointly planned and executed a coup in 1953. Operation Ajax. Mossadegh was removed, the Shah was restored to power, British oil interests were protected. The Shah was a reliable partner for 26 years. Britain and the United States sold him arms, trained his security forces, and maintained intelligence cooperation. The arrangement worked for them. In 1979, it ended. The Iranian Revolution brought Ayatollah Khamenei to power. The old stable Persia, the one that could have developed into a prosperous modernizing country, was gone. What replaced it was radical Islamic governance and permanent confrontation with the West. Britain and the United States did not cause the Iranian Revolution by themselves. But their decades of supporting a corrupt monarchy that brutalized its own population through Savak, the secret police they trained, created the conditions for exactly the kind of explosive backlash that produced it. And British intelligence had been monitoring and in some cases facilitating Iranian opposition networks for years before the revolution occurred. France granted Khomeini asylum at Neauphle-le-Château, with Western intelligence watching every move. What followed was not just a political change, it was the creation of a permanent enemy at the most strategically critical energy choke point on Earth. The Strait of Hormuz became contested territory. Iran developed the capacity to threaten or close the strait. Every time tensions rise with Iran, maritime insurance premiums spike. Every tanker operator in the world calls Lloyd's. The money flows to London. The old, stable Persia would never have generated this revenue stream. The destabilized Iran that replaced it generates it continuously. That is the pattern. Israel and the permanent flashpoint. After World War II, the Jewish people had an urgent and legitimate need for a homeland. They had survived systematic mass extermination. They needed safety. The need was real. The urgency was real. Britain had been making promises in the region since 1917 when the Balfour Declaration expressed British support for a Jewish national home in Palestine. Britain made those promises for wartime reasons. They needed Jewish support in America and Russia to help win World War I. They also made simultaneous promises to Arab leaders and secret agreements with France about dividing the region. 3 different promises to 3 different parties about the same territory. Classic imperial horse trading. Make whatever promise wins the war, figure out the consequences later. The consequences were not figuring themselves out, they were being created. The Jewish people accepted the 1947 UN partition plan. Arab leadership rejected it, and 5 Arab armies invaded the new state of Israel the day after independence was declared in May of 1948. It's interesting, I was reading the other day we were doing the Discord voice chat in the King Pill Discord. You should go join it, kingpill.com. It's Damn It Jeremy. He could vouch for me. So could Slutty Milk. Those are the names I see in the chat. Yeah, they allegedly survived mass systematic extermination. That's right. That's right. I was looking at, what we were talking about is the Promethean Action ladies who insist that FDR was a patriot. He was actually a patriot. He's one of these examples of great American executives who have been subverted by London. And I was saying, like, that one's the hard one for me. You know, I'm not opposed to the idea, but someone's going to really have to make the case for that for me. So maybe, but in the midst of that conversation, we started talking about Kermit Roosevelt. or Kim Roosevelt, as he went by. He was the key U.S. intelligence officer in the when the Shah was installed in 1953. He ran the point on that operation. He was the grandson of Teddy Roosevelt. And after that, he wound up being he was like basically kind of like an activist. He was part of a number of different pro-Arab organizations that were opposed to the creation of and the settlement of the state of Israel, and basically spent the rest of his life like representing Arab interests. And I thought that was kind of interesting. I kind of got the vibe that he essentially was like the work that I did was toward ensuring that all of the Gulf states would all be directed toward American interests, and the establishment of the state of Israel was not ultimately in America's interests, and he saw more I don't know more utility in aligning with the Arab leaders. I thought that was kind of interesting. I was familiar with him because I've read I read some books about the Dulles brothers several years back, and he featured prominently within them. And I've always just kind of had that, like CIA equals bad, but I've kind of come full circle. Like I was like all the regime change stuff, the Dulles brothers, like all those the early CIA. These were like the corrupt baddies. But I'm becoming more open to the idea of them actually originally being American patriots, and it was the regime change apparatus and the whole national security, like a global national security state that they built up, was built originally for patriotic American purposes as the American empire is beginning to start to emerge, and it ultimately got subverted and turned against itself by the neocons. That narrative of history is starting to crystallize more fully for me. Anyways, the Jewish people accepted the 1947 UN partition plan. Arab leadership rejected it, and 5 Arab armies invaded the new state of Israel the day after independence was declared in May of 1948. Britain had placed a desperate people who had survived genocide in a small territory surrounded by hostile neighbors, allegedly, with no strategic depth and no natural buffer. The resulting conflict has continued without meaningful resolution for more than 75 years. Throughout those 75 years, the Middle East has remained one of the most unstable regions on Earth. Maritime insurance rates for the Eastern Mediterranean and Red Sea have periodically spiked. Political risk insurance for the region commands enormous premiums. The financial infrastructure that profits from sustained instability has never had to worry about peace breaking out. Peace would be a problem for the system. Permanent conflict is a feature of it. The Jewish people needed safety, allegedly. The British used that need. They were placed in a location that guaranteed they would have to fight continuously for survival, while the financial architecture centered in London collected risk premiums on the chaos. That is not anti-Jewish. That is the opposite of it. The Jewish people were exploited. Their legitimate desperation was turned into an instrument of financial control. I'm not going to go there now. The hidden empire, crown, city, and offshore web. The visible empire ended. The hidden empire grew. The British Crown holds more land than any other institution on Earth. The figure cited constantly is 6.6 billion acres, roughly 16% of the total land surface of the planet, held through the Crown estate, the Duchy of Lancaster, and territories under Crown authority. King Charles III is the head of state of 15 countries: Australia, Canada, New Zealand, Jamaica, 10 others across the Caribbean and Pacific. In each of them, the Crown's representative holds the constitutional authority to dismiss elected prime ministers and dissolve parliaments under reserve powers. This is not ceremonial. In 1975, Governor General John Kerr used these powers to dismiss elected Australian Prime Minister Gough Whitlam. Gough Whitlam? Maybe it's Gough. Stupid name. Whitlam had moved to nationalize Australian mining assets and sought to terminate U.S. intelligence operations on Australian soil. The decision to remove him was made by a representative of the British Crown, not by the Australian people. In the centre of London, a 1 square mile jurisdiction operates under a legal framework that predates the British Parliament by centuries. The City of London Corporation received its first royal charter in 1067, the year after the Norman Conquest. It has its own police force, its own courts, its own budget called city's cash that is not subject to public audit. Larger businesses get more votes in its elections. The votes are cast by the CEO, not the workers. The corporation has a representative called the Remembrancer, who sits in the gallery of the House of Commons and monitors all legislation that might affect city interests. This position has existed since 1571. It is the city's permanent lobbyist, embedded inside the British Parliament by law. Former Prime Minister Clement Attlee wrote in 1937, quote, "Over and over again we have seen that there is in this country another power than that which has its seat at Westminster. The City of London, a convenient term for a collection of financial interests, is able to assert itself against the government of this country. Those who control money can pursue a policy at home and abroad contrary to that which has been decided by the people." End quote. He wrote that in 1937. He nationalized the Bank of England in 1946. The nationalization law did nothing to constrain the bank's freedom of action. The city remained beyond reach. Around the globe, Britain maintains a web of crown dependencies and overseas territories that function as the world's most important offshore financial network. Jersey, Guernsey, the Isle of Man, all outside EU and UK tax law. The Cayman Islands, the British Virgin Islands, Bermuda, Gibraltar. The BVI incorporates more than 400,000 companies annually in a territory with fewer than 35,000 residents. More than half of the companies exposed in the Panama Papers use the BVI as their incorporation jurisdiction. The Cayman Islands hosts more than 20,000 investment funds. Bermuda has specialized in insurance and reinsurance, directly connected to the Lloyd's market. The Tax Justice Network estimates that British Crown dependencies in overseas territories cost the world $169 billion in annual tax losses. The three worst offenders, the BVI, the Cayman Islands, and Bermuda, are all under British Crown authority. The United States loses an estimated $176 billion per year in tax revenue to this network. The empire did not die, it learned to hide its profits better. The LIBOR proof. Someone in Tom's group the other day used the term the Libertarians. That's really good. The Libertarians. For at least 8 years, from 2005 through 2012, the banks that set the London Interbank Offered Rate were manipulating it. LIBOR was the benchmark interest rate for an estimated $800 trillion in global financial instruments. Every adjustable rate mortgage in America tied to a floating rate. Every student loan indexed to LIBOR. Every commercial contract benchmarked to it. All priced by numbers submitted daily in London by banks who were coordinating to make those numbers whatever their trading positions needed them to be. This is like the biggest thing. Like, if you want to tell me that America is the global empire that just so happens to not control the pricing of its own currency, really? That's a very silly empire. One trader to a submitter documented in court records, quote, "We have another big fixing tomorrow, and with the market move, I was hoping we could set certain LIBORs as high as possible." End quote. That happened sometimes daily for 8 years. The banks found guilty included Barclays, Deutsche Bank, UBS, Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase, Royal Bank of Scotland, and HSBC. Global fines exceeded $9 billion, an absolute pittance. $9 billion, and what was this here? The benchmark interest rate for an estimated $800 trillion in global financial instruments. The banks coordinating to fix that rate were fined globally $9 billion. 5 banks pleaded guilty in 2015 to criminal charges of manipulating foreign exchange markets on top of the LIBOR penalties. Evidence from UK parliamentary testimony suggests the Bank of England knew about the manipulation years before it became public and did not act. The Deputy Governor of the Bank of England told Parliament's Treasury Committee he had learned of it only in the last few weeks before the scandal broke. Documents, phone calls, and sworn testimony to U.S. authorities suggested that was false. Former Assistant Secretary of the Treasury Paul Craig Roberts stated publicly, quote, "The motives of the Fed, Bank of England, U.S. and UK banks are aligned, their policies mutually reinforcing and beneficial. The LIBOR fixing is another indication of this collusion. The system that priced risk for the whole world was being run by the same institutions that profit from risk. And they were rigging the price. When you think about it, an interest rate is an expression of risk. When you're talking about like the future value of money, you are evaluating risk in the process of doing that. Or you're factoring a risk, a bunch of different risk factors to try to forecast, project what that future rate is going to be. The shadow banking setup and the MFS collapse. After the 2008 financial crisis, regulators imposed tighter capital requirements on traditional banks through Basel III. Banks had to hold more capital and step back from the riskiest lending categories. That sounds like reform. What it actually did was push an entire category of lending into non-bank financial institutions, private credit funds, hedge funds, and asset managers that were not regulated like banks and had no capital requirements. This shadow banking system grew from a niche to a $2 trillion global industry, and it funded itself by borrowing from the very same banks that had stepped back from direct lending. The banks reduced their visible risk exposure. They gained indirect exposure by lending to the funds that replaced them. By year-end 2025, total U.S. bank loans to non-deposit financial institutions reached $1.57 trillion, up 35% year over year. Banks had committed over $500 billion in unused credit lines to these same non-bank institutions. In a crisis, those private funds draw down those credit lines from the banks. The 2007 playbook is repeating in a different form. On February 20, 2026, Market Financial Solutions Limited, a London-based specialist property lender, applied for UK insolvency protection. Within days, the High Court approved formal administration after creditors alleged fraud on a massive scale. The accusation? Double pledging. The same properties used as collateral for multiple loans without disclosure. Court administrators estimated only £230 million in verifiable collateral against $1.16 billion in loans. A collateral shortfall of £930 million. This is just scratching the surface, too. This is the entire Eurodollar market is built upon this sort of rehypothecation. Because there is no regulation against this infinite rehypothecation. You can't do it in the United States, but you can do it in the city of London. Barclays had approximately £600 million in exposure. Apollo's Atlas SP Partners had approximately $400 million. Jefferies, Santander, and Wells Fargo were also among the lenders. Barclays shares fell 4.2%, Jefferies shares fell 10.7%, Santander's shares fell nearly 5% in a single day. MFS was not isolated. Thracio's bankruptcy in 2024, Tricolor Holdings' collapse in late 2024, First Brands Group's $2.3 billion alleged collateral fraud in January of 2025. Blue Owl Capital forced to permanently restrict withdrawals from a retail credit fund in February of 2026. Private credit defaults surged to a record 9.2% by late 2025. Blackstone's flagship private credit fund saw $6.5 billion in redemption requests in the first quarter of 2026. JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon had warned in October of 2025 that more cockroaches would emerge from the private credit market. When you see one, there are more behind the wall. What did he mean by this? Cockroaches? The Bank of England's own December 2025 financial stability report stated that risks to financial stability have increased during 2025, that risky asset valuations remain materially stretched, and that private markets have grown significantly without being tested through a broad-based macroeconomic stress at their current scale. The governor of the Bank of England compared some of the riskier private credit lending to the subprime mortgage crash that preceded 2008. The Strait of Hormuz and the 2026 shift. In early 2026, U.S.-Iran military escalation reached a critical threshold. Iranian attacks on Gulf shipping caused maritime insurance rates to spike 400% in a short period. Lloyd's underwriters and the protection and indemnity clubs began withdrawing coverage for vessels transiting the Strait of Hormuz. When you see P&I, that's what it's a reference to, protection and indemnity. Approximately 1,000 vessels, roughly half of them oil and gas tankers with aggregate hull value exceeding $25 billion, were effectively stranded or unable to sail. Oil can sit in a tanker ready to move. Without insurance, the ship does not leave port. Shipping companies cannot finance vessel operations without insurance. Banks will not lend against uninsured hulls. Trump responded. Hell yeah, he did. The U.S. International Development Finance Corporation would provide political risk insurance for maritime trade in the Gulf. The U.S. Navy would escort tankers through Hormuz. Within 48 hours, American insurers began moving to replace Lloyd's coverage, stepping into a market British financial infrastructure had effectively monopolized since the 1600s. JP Morgan analysts estimated total insurance exposure for vessels in the Persian Gulf at approximately $352 billion. The DFC statutory ceiling is $205 billion. There is a $147 billion gap. For the first time in more than 300 years, London's near monopoly on pricing risk for the world's most critical energy choke point was challenged and partially replaced. The country that controls the insurance of the world's oil supply controls the oil supply. That position now has a different holder. Diego Garcia and the fear signal. In 2025, Britain negotiated a deal to give sovereignty over the Chagos archipelago, including Diego Garcia, to Mauritius while leasing back only the base for 99 years. The deal included a payment of approximately £3.4 billion over 99 years. Diego Garcia is not ordinary territory. It is the joint UK-US military base in the central Indian Ocean that has been used for long-range bomber operations.
Welcome to the Gulag. If you survive, you earn your freedom.
Thank you, Borp, for the gifted sub. And Josh Ham, the Patriot, received it.
A shekel for a good guy.
Diego Garcia is not ordinary territory. It is the joint UK-US military base in the central Indian Ocean that has been used for long-range bomber operations in Afghanistan, Iraq, and strikes against Houthi targets in Yemen. It is operationally critical for any military action in the Indian Ocean and Persian Gulf region. Trump publicly attacked the deal and called it great stupidity. Reports emerged that the U.S. had reversed its position after the UK refused to allow Diego Garcia to be used for preemptive strikes on Iran. The UK Parliament delayed ratification multiple times. As of March 2026, the legislation was stalled. Then, in March of 2026, reports emerged that Iran launched 2 ballistic missiles in the direction of Diego Garcia. One reportedly failed in flight, the other was intercepted. Iran denied involvement. This is the system signaling its stress. The base that has enforced Western military presence in the Indian Ocean for decades is in legal limbo. The country that built the financial architecture around managed conflict in the region is losing operational control of the physical choke point it has used for that purpose. The intelligence cutoff. In 2025, the Trump administration restricted intelligence sharing within the Five Eyes network on critical issues, particularly Russia-Ukraine negotiation and parts of the Middle East. This is something that I don't think has been talked about nearly enough. The Trump administration restricting intelligence sharing within Five Eyes on particular issues, specifically Russia-Ukraine and parts of the Middle East. The only reason that you would restrict intelligence sharing is if you're saying, we don't trust you and we don't see you as allies. We see you as, at the very least, like self-interested and willing to take advantage of us, and at worst, openly, like open enemies. The U.S. Director of National Intelligence issued a directive classifying certain intelligence as no foreign or no foreign nationals, explicitly blocking sharing with Five Eyes allies, including the UK. Suddenly, the British side became partially blind on key files they had relied on for decades. The way this was reported matters. Much of the coverage described the UK suspending intelligence sharing with the United States as if Britain had made the choice to pull back. The sequence is the other way. The US restricted the flow first. The UK then held back some of its own intelligence in response, partly because British officials were uncomfortable being potentially complicit in US military actions they considered legally questionable. The narrative inverts the cause and the effect. It makes Britain look principled when they were reacting. That is how the system always tells its own story. Britain responding looks like Britain choosing. Britain getting cut off looks like Britain stepping back. The old arrangement where Britain could influence from behind the scenes while the United States provided the military muscle and shared the intelligence is breaking down. The senior partner changed the terms. The Donroe Doctrine, how Trump is dismantling the system. Trump did not come into office talking about the British Empire. He came in talking about America First. But what America First looks like in practice is a direct attack on every institutional pillar that kept the invisible British Empire functional after 1945. The Donroe Doctrine is the name Trump gave it himself at Mar-a-Lago. They now call it the Donroe Doctrine, he said. The 2025 National Security Strategy made it official. The Western Hemisphere must be controlled by the United States politically, economically, commercially, and militarily. Non-hemispheric competitors must be denied the ability to own or control strategically vital assets. The American people, not foreign nations or globalist institutions, will control their own destiny in the hemisphere. Read that again. Not foreign nations or globalist institutions. The globalist institutions he is talking about are the ones the London-Washington financial axis built and depends on. The IMF, the World Bank, the WTO, the BIS, the entire post-1944 framework. His own U.S. trade representative called the tariff program a, quote, remaking of the global trade order conceived at Bretton Woods, end quote. That is not an analyst description. That is the administration describing its own intentions. The moves are not rhetoric. They are documented actions. On January 3, 2026, U.S. forces launched Operation Absolute Resolve and captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in Caracas. First sitting foreign head of state seized by U.S. military forces and brought to the United States for trial in modern history. Trump announced the U.S. would run Venezuela during a transition. The administration began planning to control Venezuelan oil revenue directly. Venezuela holds the world's largest proven oil reserves. That oil has been outside the dollar-controlled system. Trump is pulling it back in. He demanded control of the Panama Canal, where Chinese companies operate port facilities. He called for Greenland, rich in rare earth minerals and commanding Arctic shipping routes. He imposed 50% tariffs on Brazil. He threatened Colombia, Mexico, and Cuba. He raised average U.S. tariff rates from 2.5% in 2024 to 28% by early 2025, the highest since 1947. Every one of those moves targets a resource, a route, or a rival that has been operating outside direct American control, often within the offshore financial and trade network that the City of London and its allied institutions maintain. The deeper attack on the British system is what Trump did to the intelligence architecture. In 2025, his Director of National Intelligence issued a directive classifying critical intelligence as no foreign, he actually is repeating himself here. Let's see here. Britain reacted, the U.S. acted, the media inverted the cause and effect. Then in early 2026, when Iranian attacks on Gulf shipping caused Lloyd's and the P&I clubs to pull risk coverage, American insurers and the U.S. Navy stepped in. The maritime insurance monopoly that London had held for more than 300 years was replaced by American guarantees and American military escorts within 48 hours. The country that controls the insurance of the world's oil supply controls the oil supply. That position now is a different holder. Talking about Diego Garcia. The Donroe Doctrine is not just about the Western Hemisphere. It is a systematic dismantling of the institutional framework that allowed a small island nation to maintain outsized global power through finance, intelligence, and manage conflict long after its empire formally ended. Trump and Netanyahu. The same war, different endgames. Here is where most people miss what is actually happening. Trump and Netanyahu jointly launched a war against Iran in February of 2026. Israel killed Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and much of his leadership in the opening strike on February 28. U.S. forces conducted Operation Midnight Hammer, bombing Iran's underground nuclear facilities at Fordow and other sites that Israel could not reach with its own weapons. They are, on the surface, allied. But they do not want the same thing, and the people around Trump know it. A White House official stated it plainly to Axios, quote, Israel doesn't hate the chaos, we do. We want stability. Netanyahu? Not so much, especially in Iran. They hate the Iranian government a lot more than we do. End quote. That single quote explains the entire relationship. Netanyahu has spent his career working toward the destruction of the Iranian regime. That's not an exaggeration. It has been the consistent theme of his political life for decades. He pushed every U.S. president to take harder positions on Iran. He finally got what he wanted when Trump came back into office. In 2025, the U.S. and Iran were 5 rounds into direct nuclear talks. On the eve of the sixth round, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a major air campaign against Iran, and derailed the diplomacy entirely. Trump then joined, ordering the U.S. bombing of nuclear sites Israel could not destroy on its own. Trump joined the war, but Trump's advisors want the war to end. Netanyahu wants to keep going. The pattern of Trump putting distance between himself and Israel's agenda is documented across multiple events that all happened without Israel's knowledge or prior agreement. Trump negotiated a ceasefire with the Houthis without telling Israel, 2 days after a Houthi missile struck near Ben Gurion Airport. Israel found out after the fact. Houthi missile launches against Israel increased after the American ceasefire. Trump opened direct talks with Iran without telling Israel. Netanyahu was sitting in the Oval Office when Trump revealed the talks were already underway. Netanyahu had to restrain his reaction in the room. Trump ended U.S. sanctions on Syria without telling Israel, even though Israel has direct security concerns about Syrian territory. Trump's Middle East visit did not include a stop in Israel. It included massive arms deals with Gulf states that raised questions about Israel's qualitative military edge, a commitment enshrined in U.S. law. Trump's people described Netanyahu's strategy as maintaining regional dominance through chaos. Trump's people want the region to become, in Trump's own words, quote, a place of partnership, friendship, and investment, end quote. Those are opposite goals. Netanyahu needs permanent conflict in the region to justify Israel's security posture and his own political survival. Trump needs stability in the region to free up military and financial resources for the Western Hemisphere, which is where his doctrine says American power should be concentrated. Trump admitted it directly to reporters. Israel's aims could be, quote, a little bit different than his. You know, they're there and we're very far away. The senior advisors around Trump are explicit that they are aware of the optics. Quote, we are cognizant of the appearance of doing Israel's bidding. We're not, but we understand the perception and it's not helpful, a senior Trump advisor told Axios. That is the administration saying out loud that they know Israel is trying to use American military power for Israeli strategic objectives and that they are trying to limit how much that succeeds. This matters for the British Empire pattern because Israel's permanent conflict model is exactly what has fed the Lloyd's insurance revenue stream and justified the intelligence architecture that kept Britain relevant. Imagine that! Isn't that fascinating? The precise insurance revenue and intelligence architecture that Britain has established and maintained all around the world just so happens to correspond directly to Bibi Netanyahu's goals for the region. Trump wanting stability rather than managed chaos is a direct threat to the British system's business model. The system profits from risk. Trump, at least on the Don Road Doctrine terms, wants to reduce risk in the Middle East and redirect American power to the Western Hemisphere, where British financial and intelligence infrastructure has far less presence. The chaos that kept London profitable for decades is the chaos Trump wants to end. Not because he understands the British Empire pattern, but because the Don Road Doctrine requires it. How Israel divided America. The conflict that Britain planted in the Middle East did not only divide the region, it divided the United States. That division is now one of the deepest fault lines in American politics, and it's getting wider every year. For decades, support for Israel in America was bipartisan and largely unchallenged. Republicans and Democrats competed to show their loyalty to the relationship. AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, worked behind the scenes as an issues-based lobbying organization, quiet and effective. That changed in 2021 when AIPAC launched its own political action committee and super PAC and began spending directly on elections for the first time. In 2024, AIPAC and affiliated groups spent more than $100 million on 389 congressional races, 26 in the Senate and 363 in the House. According to The Intercept, AIPAC spent money on more than 80% of all seats up for re-election. Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson received at least $654,000. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries received at least $933,000. Both parties, both leaders, 318 AIPAC-backed candidates won. The biggest spending was targeted at progressives who criticized Israel's actions. AIPAC spent more than $29 million combined to defeat Representatives Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush in Democratic primaries, two of the most expensive House primary elections in U.S. history. Both lost. This is how a foreign policy issue becomes an internal weapon. Candidates who questioned unconditional military support were removed. Candidates who pledged loyalty received money. The message to everyone watching was clear: disagreement has consequences. But the spending created a problem. It made the issue visible. It made people ask who is paying and why. And Gaza made it impossible to look away. Since October 7, 2023, U.S. public opinion on Israel has shifted faster than on almost any foreign policy issue in modern polling history. The numbers are documented. Only 9% of Americans under 35 approve of Israel's military actions in Gaza. Among older Democrats, favorability toward Israel dropped to an average of 41 on a scale of 0 to 100, down from around 55 where it had held for 5 decades. For the first time since Gallup began asking the question a quarter century ago, more Americans say their sympathies lie with Palestinians than Israelis, 41% to 36%. The generational divide is the sharpest. 79% of Republicans over 65 sympathize more with Israel. Only 40% of Republicans under 44 agree. Among young Republicans, a majority now oppose renewing the U.S.-Israel weapons agreement. Figures like Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene wrapped their Israel criticism in America First language. Look at the actual pattern. Neither one has defended the Venezuela operation, championed Greenland, backed the tariff war dismantling Bretton Woods, or said a word about what Trump is doing to the British intelligence architecture. They found one issue where their audience overlaps with the progressive base, and they are writing it. That is not America First. That's the old Rhino playbook dressed in populist clothes, doing exactly what the British system has always needed American political figures to do. Keep the domestic audience focused on the Middle East conflict instead of the system behind it. The country is now split on this question along lines of age, party, race, class, and geography, in ways that intersect with every other division already tearing American political culture apart. Campus protests in 2024 divided universities. The question of who is anti-Semitic and who is simply anti-war split friendships, families, and coalitions. AIPAC's aggressive primary spending created a backlash that made the lobby itself a political issue for the first time. Candidates who used to quietly accept AIPAC money are now publicly returning it. This is what the permanent conflict produces on the American side. The British planted the flashpoint in the Middle East. The flashpoint generates war, which generates risk, which generates insurance revenue in London. But the political consequences of that war travel back across the Atlantic and land inside American democracy. They split the Democratic Party, they split young Republicans from old Republicans, they create a single-issue voting bloc powerful enough to unseat incumbents, and a backlash movement powerful enough to make supporting that bloc politically toxic. The division is not accidental. A society that is perpetually arguing about a conflict 6,000 miles away, spending political capital on it, losing elections over it, and fracturing its coalitions because of it, is a society that is distracted. A distracted society does not look at the system that created the conflict, it looks at the conflict. That is the point. The pattern. The same mechanism, different names, different decades, different geography. Conflict creates risk. Risk gets priced in London. The money flows to the city. The intelligence networks stay relevant. The offshore territories stay full. The architecture stays intact. The British Empire took advantage of the Jewish people's alleged real need, for safety and planted them in a location guaranteed to produce permanent conflict. Britain helped destroy stable Persia and built the conditions for a radical Iran sitting at the world's most critical energy choke point. Both decisions generated continuous risk premiums for the same London insurance market. Neither was designed to produce peace, because peace was never the objective. Now, Lloyd's war risk premiums have spiked fourfold in the Gulf. The Five Eyes intelligence flow has been cut. Diego Garcia sits in legal limbo. A London-based lender collapsed with a £930 million collateral fraud. The Bank of England is warning that private markets have never been stress tested at their current scale. Trump is dismantling the institutional framework the invisible empire depends on. The pattern does not change because the people who benefit from the pattern have not changed. They never lost the empire. They just made it invisible. This article connects to a body of work published over the past year. Each piece goes deeper on a specific thread of the same problem. So he's got an article called Britain Still Owns America, and here's the proof. The Price of Financial Independence. Hamilton, Lincoln, Kennedy, Reagan, Trump, and Kirk. 6 men who challenged the money system and what happened to each of them. We are living another civil war, and it started before you noticed, and patriotism is not a dirty word. The vocabulary swap that replaced republic with democracy and liberty with social. How the language shift made the system invisible. Very interesting. Very, very interesting indeed. Borp says, I've got a lot of people I know that need to listen to this, a bunch of conservatives that truly do not understand what's going on. Right. For sure. And this is my issue with the people who want to make everything about Israel or Zionism more broadly. It's like yeah, it is a major issue. It's a serious component that drives all of this, but it's not the single, like it exists within a broader context, within a broader framework. And those broader interests are both obviously deeply intertwined with these particular matters, but excuse me, but they extend over and beyond that. And when people are talking about millions of dollars here, billions of dollars there, like the sorts of financial pools of capital that exist in these within these financial institutions, we're talking, especially the derivatives market is like 4 quadrillion or something like that. And so many of these assets exist off the books. They're not even countable.
I find it fascinating how insurance companies are the linchpin of this British system. Hobbes' book Democracy, the God That Failed places insurance companies at the center of stability. Chew on that.
That is an interesting thought. Holy shit. JLH, you just rocked my world. He said, I find it fascinating how insurance companies are the linchpin of this British system. Hoppe's book, Democracy, the God That Failed, places insurance companies at the center of stability. Damn! Libertarianism was a fucking op from the very beginning. That's wild to think about. Yeah, I mean, like, once you control insurance, and there's like, there's something about, I'm thinking about this, the financialization thing. So you have this empire that spreads out, and like you think of power as being associated to territory, but then the more that you're able to, like, the more sophisticated and complex these webs of relationships these webs of relationships become, they the more you're like abstracting away into these financialized networks, and then the powers live within these financialized networks that are all built upon leverage, which enables, like the definition of leverage is that something relatively small can move something relatively large. So you can have relatively small assets, but when you rehypothecate these financialized schemes on top of them, then a relatively small number of assets can ultimately move a large number of influences, a large number of institutions or people or assets. Which is itself becomes it's parasitic. You have this intermediary, and like this third party, this the merchant, the merchant who exists as the third party between the sovereign and his people, wedges himself in, creates these financialized schemes, and then that's where the empire has lived. The empire has lived in the financialization schemes, and it incentivizes consumption. So when you begin taking that back and you begin enforcing production, this is what's brilliant about the American system of political economy, which is that you take the financial interests and you direct them into you bind them to the development of productive capacity. So then you actually get a mutually beneficial cycle as opposed to this extractive parasitic cycle. Kalmar says, speaking of insurance, Trump is looking into placing RICO charges against State Farm for systemic fraud. That would be yes. And yes.
Wild this situation with Hoppy and the Mises Institute. I'm thinking of pulling my annual donation given the split from Hoppy.
Yeah, man. The Mises Institute, the Ron Paul Institute, like, what's happening to my sweet libertarians, bros? It's interesting that Justine pronounced it Hoppy here, and the last one she said Hoppa, or the last one she said Hop. Yeah, like, I mean, Daniel McAdams, like, it makes my heart ache seeing poor old Ron Paul being, like, let the man rest. Seeing him on screen with this chubby, deranged lesbian, Daniel McAdams, is just, it's hard on my soul. Yeah, don't do insurance with any company that has farm in the name. No kidding. Okay, so let's talk a little bit here as we begin to wind down the show. Let's talk a little bit about Pam Bondi. But before that, I had to fit this in here. My president got a bee in his bonnet yesterday about Bruce Springsteen. And when the boomers start talking shit to each other, there's nothing better. There is nothing better than a pissed off boomer going both barrels against another one. Especially when that boomer is one of the greatest posters of all time. Bad and very boring singer Bruce Springsteen, who looks like a dried up prune who has suffered greatly from the work of a really bad plastic surgeon, has long had a horrible and incurable case of Trump derangement syndrome, sometimes referred to as TDS. My God, looks like a dried up prune. Like a guy who's had a whole bunch of plastic surgery done, obviously is very self-conscious about his looks. And so being told you look like a dried up prune. I mean, if you live in a world where people are getting plastic surgery all the time, imagine insulting someone by being like, wow, your plastic surgeon sucks. You look like a dried up prune. The guy is a total loser who spews hate against the president, who won a landslide election, including the popular vote, all 7 swing states, and 86% of the counties across America. See, it's not just that he's coming after me, says Trump. I am a stand-in for you. He wants to come after you. I'm just standing in the way. Under Sleepy Joe and the Dems, our country was dead. And now we have the hottest country by far anywhere in the world. In all caps, MAGA should boycott his overpriced concerts, which suck. Save your hard-earned money. America is back. So true, Mr. President. So true. I will continue my boycott of Bruce Springsteen's overpriced concerts, which suck. So true indeed. All right, so everyone has wanted Bondi out for a long time, and it's kind of funny because I just did a thing on the show yesterday morning. You see, if I'd done the show yesterday evening, I would have been talking about Pam Bondi being fired. But I did it in the morning, so I talked about another great thing that Pam Bondi's DOJ is doing. And then news breaks immediately after that she is out as Attorney General. Now, obviously, a lot of people have wanted this for a long time, so it's going to make people look really happy. At the same time, this doesn't... In the midst of everything else that's happening right now, suddenly cutting loose cabinet officials does give the appearance of, like, reactivity or instability or that sort of thing. So this is the second one now. We had Kristi Noem, and now we had Pam Bondi. So the first initial report about this came from Peter Doocy over at Fox. It had been kind of rumored over the night, and then Peter Doocy came out with this report yesterday.
Kaylee, I just got off the phone with President Trump. We have a big scoop. Pam Bondi will soon leave her job as the Attorney General. she is going to get a different job within the administration. It doesn't sound like there is any bad blood between her and President Trump, but it does seem like they want her to go and do something else. And in an interim role, she will be replaced by Todd Blanche, who is currently her deputy at the Justice Department. So,
a couple things to note from this. We'll get into it a little bit more in just a minute, but the initial report here says that Pam Bondi is going to another role in the administration. We'll have more on this in a second. But there's kind of a parallel here where Kristi Noem is out as a DHS secretary, but she is moved over into this other role that is not, I mean, yeah, it's a demotion, because this could be like, well, I don't want to fire him, so I'm just going to demote him. And look, no, we just reassigned them, but actually they were fired. I can't really weigh in one way or the other, whether to consider Kristi Noem's removal, and now she's the head of this, I can't remember the thing regarding the cartels in South America, this new like board or some sort of organization for prosecuting the cartels. And then here with Pam Bondi, like I think they're fired. I think that they're not being removed for because the president is super happy with them. Like, he obviously has cause for removing them. But it's also not, these sorts of things, nobody can talk about these things in just, moderate, calm, rational, centrist terms. As Slutty Moke says here, Bondi got an impressive amount done given all the constraints. Even without those constraints, it would be considered a lot. Yeah, she did. And that's the thing that the DOJ is such a festering hive of corruption that is going to be difficult for anyone. And seeing how Matt Gaetz has behaved over the last year and a half or so, it's left me thinking, maybe it's probably better that he was not the Attorney General. But yeah, so I don't know if I would necessarily consider this a firing per se. We'll see. We'll see where she winds up. We'll have more on that here in just a minute.
Her to go and do something else, and in an interim role, she will be replaced by Todd Blanche, who is currently her deputy at the Justice Department. So
he's really emphasizing Todd Blanche is an interim candidate. And this is a little trend that I'm seeing from people talking about this. The expectation is not that Todd Blanche is going to stay in that role. The idea is that there is going to be a new attorney general who is appointed to replace, or is nominated to replace Pam Bondi.
It doesn't sound like Blanche is being elevated long-term to the Attorney General. There might be somebody else that the president wants to go in there. But President Trump soon will announce to the entire world that it is the end of Pam Bondi's time as the Attorney General. He still thinks that she is a great person and that she did a good job. And he still wants her in the fold because she will still be an important part of the administration, he tells me. But no longer as the top law enforcement officer of the United States. That, at least for a little while, is going to be Todd Blanche.
So he reiterates a couple of times there that that she is going to have another role within the administration. And about 20 minutes after that news report, Trump posted this. He said, Pam Bondi is a great American patriot and a loyal friend who faithfully served as my Attorney General over the past year. Pam did a tremendous job overseeing a massive crackdown in crime across our country, with murders plummeting to their lowest level since 1900. We love Pam, and she will be transitioning. We love Pam, and she will be transitioning. Oh, no! To a much-needed and important new job in the private sector, to be announced at a date in the near future. So there's a little bit of a difference here. What he tells Peter Doocy is that she's going to remain within the administration. What he posts here is that she's going to be going to a much-needed and important new job in the private sector. Now, I've got a little speculation on that. We'll get to it in a minute. All the Q folks went bonkers yesterday. And our Deputy Attorney General and a very talented and respected legal mind, Todd Blanche, will step in to serve as an acting Attorney General. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. So Todd Blanche is an interesting character here. I've been watching for a while. So originally Todd Blanche was one of Trump's defense attorneys between 2020 and 2024 in his personal cases that he was dealing with. He came originally from the SDNY, and he passed up a pretty significant, lucrative opportunity in the private sector to take this role with the president. Now, he's been registered as a Democrat before, and so Laura Loomer especially has been making a ton of hay on this for months, talking about how he's a subversive Democrat pretending to be a Republican, and he's the one who's been obstructing all the investigations and preventing anything from for anything substantive from coming through the DOJ, and he's the one who blocked Ed Martin and his weaponization of government investigations and prosecutions. Alex Jones has been going at this for a while, and Emerald Robinson is another one who's been saying that he's a obstructionist. And I'll just say, first of all, just to deal with the Democrat-Republican thing, being like someone's registration is, especially if there's someone who's like been in like in DC or in New York for a long period of time, I'm not going to put a ton of stock as into like what they were registered as. It may be informative, it may not be. It may just be that they were just sort of like whatever. I'm just going to register as whatever party my parents were registered as, or they're just like sort of the default whatever is kind of the mainstream vibe in that area. It also can do with the way that whether it's the way the primaries are handled or who gets to vote when and like that sort of thing can play into their registration. So I don't put a ton of stock in that. But regarding Todd Blanche, whether he's a subversive and blocking stuff or whether he's not, I can't say either way. There's no way for me to know that. I will say that I don't really trust Laura Loomer. I don't, and the way that Emerald Robinson and Alex Jones have been behaving lately, I'm not really all that inclined to trust them. They're just, you start noticing some patterns here, and I'm seeing some patterns that indicate to me that I shouldn't just take their word for it. So I've been monitoring the situation on all of these allegations about Todd Blanche for a long time. Ed Martin has come out and straight up denied them, said these are not the case at all. He's like posted pictures of himself with Todd Blanche. Todd Blanche has been going around and doing some of the interviews. He interviewed with Katie Miller, the Giga Jew's wife, not that long ago. So he's sort of trying to do like a little like image maintenance thing, I guess. So the way it was treated is, he's like holding a gun to Ed Martin's head and forcing him to say this to hide his subversive activities. And I'm kind of like, I don't really buy it. But again, I can't hold a strong position on this one way or the other. And someone may say that's a cop-out. I don't really care. Like, it's... I could believe it. I also am not just going to believe it because Laura Loomer says so. Even if Alex Jones endorses it as well. I think the fact that Todd Blanche chose to stay... Number one, he chose to represent Trump, knowing the social cost of that. And then he chose to serve within the administration as opposed to going back into and just like remaining in private practice. I do think that those things should be seen as marks in favor of him. And really the big thing with Pam Bondi, right when she was announced, I asked someone who would know, who I trust, and the report that I got on her was that she would be, above all, she would be loyal to Trump. And that she has extensive connections and has been in and around, especially in Florida, has been in and around there and has people who owe stuff to her and knows who to call and who to talk to, and that would be a great service that she would provide. Also, that she is a total attention whore and loves to get in front of cameras and is typically embarrassing when she does that. And that to me encapsulates exactly what her time as Attorney General was. Loyal, which is really like one of the most important things. I want loyalty and I want competence. And at the job of being attorney general in terms of the actual operations of it, everything that I've seen says she was very competent. The Department of Justice handicapping for it's full of traitors and subversives and is virtually a lost cause. Handicapping for that, I think the Department of Justice has been able to accomplish a tremendous amount in the time that she was there. She was also, I never once questioned her loyalty to the president. Competence, so there's like inward-facing competence, which I think passed with flying colors, essentially. Outward-facing competence, you don't want her giving interviews. You don't want her on the stand. Like, just the optics aren't great there. Slutty Milk says the criticisms of her on Trayvon Martin and red flag laws aren't fair or very strong. I can't remember why, but I looked into it before. Those were, I heard about those as well, and there were things I kind of take them with a grain of salt a little bit. I think maybe there's some validity to them. I also think she's just like a political operator, and 15 years in 20 years, in the current political environment is a pretty long time. So I never put a ton of stock into them. I just kind of took them as like, yeah, seems like she's just kind of a political animal with a nose for power, and so she's going to be loyal to the Trump. Then she's useful. Now, a report here from Reagan Reese over at Daily Caller said, a White House official tells me that there was no bad blood between Bondi and Trump, but he felt she wasn't doing a good job and it was time to move on, i.e. rate of prosecutions. This is something I've seen from a few different people, and it seems like there may be some legs to this, that basically Trump is wanting to scale up the prosecutory effort here and didn't think that Bondi was going to be the right one for that. Now, that could mean a couple of things. A source familiar with the firing pushed back, quote, the idea that Bondi lacked aggression and skill in pursuing justice for those who targeted Republicans is pure fiction spread by people who stand to generously benefit from her removal. Real legal results take time, and her detractors know that. This has basically been my stance on her for the entire time she was the Attorney General. Real legal results take time. Nobody wants to hear that. Everyone wants the immediate fix everything button, but that doesn't exist, particularly when you get into prosecutions. They're gonna take a long time, like years and years and years, especially when you're dealing with major cases, and there's all the system trying to protect itself. You gotta dot all your T's and cross all your I's, and so nobody wants to. They think that it's like a criticism or it's like damning with faint praise if you have to say, well, considering the circumstances, she did well. I don't think that's damning with faint praise. I think the circumstances are a legitimate factor that has to be considered. Seth Levy here says, I don't think it was a technical execution problem. I think that there are prosecutions about to percolate to the surface, and Trump wanted someone who could aggressively prosecute the case in the court of public opinion, not Bondi's strong suit. I think there may be some validity to this, and this could be the thing that he's ready for. Like they've reached this point where there's going to be substantial prosecutions coming forward, and she's put her foot in her mouth enough times in public as the Attorney General that he decided he wanted someone else. I'm not going to say that this has been the plan all along. I don't really think that. If the idea was like, okay, we're going to have Bondi come in and do this work for a while, and then eventually we're going to replace her with someone else, I don't really think that's the plan. I also think it could be a valid criticism to say, if the plan all along has been prosecutions, which I do believe that has been the plan all along, I do think that Trump and people in and around his administration fully intend to prosecute, Russiagate and election theft and all this stuff. I do believe that they intend to prosecute this to whatever extent that they can. And so, if that was the case, it's not like it's a big secret that she's a press conference whore who has a tendency to say silly stuff in public. Like, that's kind of a well-documented characteristic of hers. So I think that would be a valid criticism to level here, to say, if Trump is like, wants someone who can aggressively prosecute the case in the court of public opinion, and that's something that Bondi's not great at, maybe she shouldn't have been the one in the first place. So Jonathan Turley here says the news of the departure of Pam Bondi hit with a thunderclap in Washington. There were some recent rumors, but nothing concrete in the prior week. Bondi is the ultimate loyalist who, like Todd Blanche, the new acting AG, earned her bones in the trenches with the president in impeachment and criminal trials. The president has certainly removed prior cabinet officers out of obvious displeasure, from Bill Barr to most recently Kristi Noem. There's no known bad blood with Bondi, who has actually drawn fire for her loyalty to Trump. The move to Blanche will be seamless. He has not only been serving with Bondi, but he's an experienced and distinguished lawyer. He's been a partner in a world-class law firm, as well as a successful prosecutor in the leading U.S. Attorney's Office in the SDNY. Lee Zeldin. So Lee Zeldin, current EPA administrator, he's one of the ones who's widely rumored as the as perhaps Trump's chief pick for the new Attorney General. Lee Zeldin has the advantage of being a known and popular figure on Capitol Hill. The Democrats have expressly promised that if returned to power, they will unleash investigations and impeachments targeting not just the president, but those who supported him. Zeldin has been a steady hand at the tiller in EPA, bringing massive changes and greater fiscal responsibility at that agency. So I think it'll be interesting kind of to see over the next however many weeks or months that Todd Blanche is the acting. It'll be interesting to see if there seems to be a change in tone or posture of the DOJ in one direction or the other. Does it become a lot more aggressive, or does it become much less so? I would imagine that we're probably going to see this Trump administration has been pretty good about leaks, but it probably, I wouldn't be surprised if we get a lot of politicking and leaking and stuff that starts happening after this as people are jockeying for position there. As of now, I'm open to the idea that Todd Blanche has been an obstructionist or whatever, but I just haven't seen enough to fully confirm that for me. And his history with Trump and the fact that he chose to get into this role versus just stay in private practice, I think those are big check marks in the column in his favor. So we'll see what happens over the next weeks or months. But all in all, I think this may wind up being a net good thing, though it does lend a little bit to the idea that there's turmoil. The last thing I wanted to get into was this was just one other thing regarding Todd Blanche. These are the allegations. From AF Post here, says, according to multiple current Trump administration officials with access to Pam Bondi, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who was just named acting Attorney General, has been the main roadblock, holding up prosecutions of former Biden officials, state-level politicians, and Antifa terrorists. Todd Blanche personally shut down the DOJ's weaponization task force and is responsible for sidelining Ed Martin. Todd Blanche sees himself as a principled conservative and views investigations of Trump's enemies, like Jack Smith, as an abuse of power. He has privately told staff that he will not stoop to that level. Under Todd Blanche, the failure of the DOJ to investigate left-wing terrorists and former officials who prosecuted President Trump will only get worse. So, I mean, I just got to say, on physiognomy terms, if we're talking like we're going to lay down the law, yeah, I got to say, it's really, really rich to see people demand for so long that we get these stupid bimbos out of these important roles. Give me a powerful white man. And then we get a powerful white man in the role. But actually, no, it can't be him. It can't be him. No, he's the one who's obstructing everything. He's a traitor. And again, like, maybe he is. Maybe he is the one who's obstructing everything. But at a certain point, you got to trust that the president is the guy we elected to do the thing that he's doing. He's the one who knows these people. He's the one who knows what he wants done. He's the one who relates to them and talks to them on a regular basis. And if he decides that he trusts them, then the best I can do is just accept that he trusts them. I just don't trust the people who are, AF Post, Emerald Robinson, Alex Jones, Laura Loomer. I don't trust that these people don't have their own axe to grind. That is not. I don't trust their takes on Todd Blanche. So we'll see what happens. As for what's going to happen with with the grug bimbo dichotomy. Yeah. As for what's going to happen with Pam Bondi, the thing that the Q people were really going off about is their take on this is now Pam Bondi is headed into a particular role with respect to the prosecutions. Essentially, she went in there, she like gathered all the information, and now she's going to be directly involved in prosecuting stuff like in Florida or something like that. Now, there could be some interesting legs to this because if they decided that they wanted to appoint a special counsel, one of the requirements for a special counsel role is that it has to be someone who is not currently in the government employ. It has to be someone coming from the so-called private sector. So you got this kind of mixed message where Peter Doocy talks to Trump and then immediately says she's actually getting moved to another role within the administration that they've got lined up for her. Then Trump says she's going to this very important role in the private sector. And those seem to be kind of at odds with each other, but a special counsel role would be one that would make both of those things make sense. Now, obviously, all the people who have been screaming for Bondi to be fired for so long, if it turns out that she's going to be like the special counsel in charge of investigating election theft or something like that, then we're just going to have to listen to the same shit for even longer. So a part of me just really does not want that to be the case, but it would be an interesting little twist. Either way, though, the subtext from all of this, I think, is that there's been other indicators for this, leaks, rumors, rumblings, and I think maybe the buried lead in all of this is that more aggressive prosecution is coming down the pike, and the timing would be rather interesting. You know, summer, if leading into the midterms, all the narrative is about Russiagate and election theft and the connection between them and prosecutions, more major arrests of people in the Obama orbit. That would be a very interesting narrative, a narrative to be really flaming in the build-up to the midterms. And it seems as if that's the direction that things are heading. So Pam Bondi is out. Reportedly, Lee Zeldin is the one being considered to replace her, which he's another guy who's very, very loyal, has demonstrated himself as loyal, has done a good job at EPA. He's also a little, like Todd Blanche looks like a hard ass, looks like a fucking pipe hitter. And Lee Zeldin is not that. Lee Zeldin is actually kind of like just a friendly guy. So I don't know about him as AG, but Paxton as AG would be very interesting. How would that be for resolving the Cornyn Paxton issue? You send Paxton up, which could also be another reason why the timing of this would be like perhaps this is the negotiated resolution for that situation. I kind of suspect we would be hearing about that if it was the case. I can't imagine that something like that could be worked out without some sort of leak coming out regarding that. But Ron DeSantis is another person that people have suggested as Attorney General. That one would make me, I don't know. If Trump decided to do that, then I'd be like, okay, I trust the man, but that would be quite a ballsy move to take the guy who at one point was seen as kind of like the chief opposition within the party, the candidate running against you within the party for the nomination, to put them in a position of significant power like that, investigating the people who have tried to ruin your life. That'd be quite a move. So I kind of don't think it's going to happen. I think it's probably going to wind up being Lee Zeldin. I think all of those reports are coming out for a reason. But there was one other report that said, turn DeSantis into another Marco Grande. That would be great. There was another report that said some people had suggested they wanted to move Pam Bondi over to DNI to replace Tulsi Gabbard, and Trump explicitly shot that down. He said no, that he is happy with Tulsi where she's at, and in that answer he also said something like he acknowledged that Tulsi is a little softer on Iran and a nuclear weapon than he is. So it was interesting that he explicitly said that. Yeah, like he thinks like Tulsi is probably a little softer on this, but I'm totally happy with her and where she's at. So yeah, Straight Buster says whatever Trump decides is the correct move and is exactly what I voted for. Exactly. It's really that simple. It makes life very easy. You don't have to stress about these things. Whatever Trump decides works for me. Alrighty, well, that is another Labe in the books. The week is drawing to a close. Hopefully you guys have a nice, productive, white-pilling Friday. I am going to go down and see the little man and then go get some sleep. Make sure you guys tune in tomorrow for the pseudo-wave. Let me see. He said earlier that okay. Oh, hold on just a second. The man was listening. He did it. Okay, here we go. Do you want me to do it? Dang it. Or were you just reacting to you thought I was not going to start it? You did intend, just to make sure, sir. You did intend. Yes, okay. Yes. Here we go. You ask. This is amazing. I can place my orders here on the Labe, and in real time, it shows up.
There's your American values. I mean, this country was founded by racist smugglers, frontier warlords, land speculators, and plantation owners pretending to be Romans. And that's why it's the greatest country in the world.
Yes! Glorious! Even better than I could have imagined. Oh, Suda, you are a patriot. That's your guys' teaser. Make sure you guys show up tomorrow for the Suda Labe. Or can we tell them? Can we tell them what it's going to be? Waiting for the answer. Do you want to hold it off until tomorrow, or do you want to tell them now? I'm shooting for probably about noon Central Time is when we will do it. It's Hunt for Red October, right? That's what you said? Hunt for Red October? Is that what you wound up doing? Yeah, baby! So show up tomorrow. Astrolabe, Pseudolabe, Pseudo-Wave, Satterlabe, whatever you want to call it. It's happening tomorrow. I'm going to say about noon Central Time. That'll give you guys on the West Coast, make it a little easier on you, and we will wave. It'll be glorious. So please make sure that you follow the show wherever you watch it. Like, share, subscribe, all those sorts of things. Please do tip your streamer. Reminder, you can tip any time of the day or night. Just go over to tips.kingpill.com, and I'll make sure that it gets played on the show. And then 5-star rating review, all those sorts of things. Follow the Substack and go join the King Pill Discord. Kingpilled.com. I'm enjoying doing the Labe in the mornings. I like this. This is good stuff. All right, guys. I will catch you tomorrow for the Pseudo-Wave back here on Kick. Just search for King Pilled on Kick and come join us for the live show. Remember, never doom. And I will leave you with Hulk.
When they took a shot at my hero, and they tried to kill the next president of the United States, enough was enough. And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother. Trumpomania,